Okay, that should be everything. We should be live. So, yeah, before I get started, if anybody could let me know if the microphone's working. Should be working fine, just I can never tell until somebody lets me know. Right. Crack open a can before I get started. All right. Audio's good. Awesome. Cheers. Yeah, good to see you, CPB. Been a while, man. God bless you. Good evening, buddy. Yeah, good evening to you too, man. Iron Fist, good to see you. God bless you. YTBC is a good example of the term clown world. Look up the salty title from Boxing Beats and Rhymes new video. Love the live streams. Keep up training as well. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Boxing Beats and Rhymes. Do you know? I don't think I've ever even watched a single video of his. Like I see his name all over the place. I hear people mention him. I don't think I've ever actually checked out his channel because from everything that I have heard about the guy, I just don't like what I hear. Basically, what was his title? Let me know. Like I probably won't bother going and watching it, but yeah. I mean, the guy was on a live stream one time with Mark, and I can remember he got really, really pissed off and salty, as you say, and he kind of put a downer on the whole thing. He's just one of these like Black Power Ranger types. That's what he seemed like to me. I don't know the guy, but yeah, it's as far as I know. Um, so tell us how you really feel about the Philly shell. I'll tell you exactly how I feel about the Philly shell. It gives me a headache, and I mean that in the literal sense. I've tried it in 2 sparring sessions now, and I ended up with a headache both times. So, yeah, not fond of it. Did you have some space cakes on the mystery machine? Oh, yeah, without a doubt. As you can tell by my face, I'm completely out of it. Had some Scooby snacks. I say that in quotations. Yeah, that sounds fine. Awesome. Cheers. Yeah, you can never tell. Yeah, this microphone has a habit of just changing the bloody sound settings itself. I don't know what that's all about. So yeah, I don't want it to be a situation where I go through like the entire live not noticing what the audio's like. So yeah, it's all good. No problem. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about with this live stream in particular, I had a lot of things on my mind earlier today for what I actually wanted to discuss with this, but my mind's kind of gone blank at the moment. But basically, it was just stuff involving the YTBC. It'll all come back to me though. Do you think that Fury's cut is legitimate? And if so, it'll affect the Usyk fight? No, I don't think so. I don't think it was a real cut. I've looked very closely at the photographs that have been posted, and it seems to me like it's a situation where they weren't going to fight in February. I never thought the fight was going to happen in February, if truth be told. It seems to me like they wanted to build it more. They wanted to get more people betting on the fight. They wanted to skewer the odds a little bit. And yeah, they're just marinating it essentially. I don't think the fight was ever, like I said, I don't think it was ever going to happen in February. I don't think that Fury was cut. I think if he was cut, we would have seen more proof than he's shown, because all we've seen is like 2 photographs of it, and one of them seemed to be mirrored, so that the cut was on the wrong side, and both of them were very, very low res. So I just think it's a manufactured story, if you know what I mean. I don't believe that he was cut in sparring. Plus, I mean, he was wearing fully padded headgear. If you were going to get cut anywhere in sparring with that type of head guard, it wouldn't have been like above the eye. It would have been on the bridge of the nose, or above or between the eyes, or something like that, where you're a little bit less protected. So, yeah, I don't believe the cut was real. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe it was. Maybe I'm just too cynical or pessimistic. But yeah, I don't think the cut was real, personally. Does it give Usyk an advantage? No, not really. I don't think it gives either guy an advantage, to be perfectly honest. Because again, I don't even think it was real. Shout out to Rolf, by the way. Go back on the high god. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. I used to be the guy, but the last few years. Oh, I used to like the guy, sorry. But the last few years, he's been really weird. The title is Lomachenko is a white hope. Wow. Yeah. Well, do you know that doesn't surprise me one bit from what I've heard about the guy, and I'll probably never check out his channel because I don't want to give him the revenue. If truth be told, you know. Afternoon Nordic. Afternoon to you too, JD. God bless you. The thing that surprises me about most, or surprises me most about the Fury situation, is the amount of people online who are genuinely surprised. This is the same Fury who pulled out of the Vlad fights twice. Yeah, he's pulled out of loads of fights with like bullshit injuries. He does it all the time, you know? But again, I don't think that. I mean, do you really think that Usyk and his team thought the fight was going to happen in February? There was no way that that fight was going to happen so soon after the Ngannou and Dubois fights. It was never going to happen that quickly. Not a fight of that magnitude. Not a fight that with that much, that much at stake. It was never going to happen that soon. So, yeah, I just think that again, look, it's just all drama. Like, who cares really? And they're just messing us about. That's all they do. That's what these these boxing promoters, these networks, they always mess us about. They always throw red herrings out there. They always do all sorts of gatekeeping. They create fake dramas, fake beef, and all of it skewers the betting odds and gets everybody talking and just builds the fight. So by the time it happens, it'll be bigger and more profitable than ever, you know? It was never going to happen in February. I thought that was pretty obvious, if truth be told. And personally, no, I don't think the cut was real. You can easily fake a cut. Easily. The Fury cut is either old AI or Photoshop. I assume it was just Photoshop, or there was like makeup involved or something. But look, you can easily Photoshop a cut, and he hasn't shown any definitive proof of it. So yeah, I don't believe for 1 second it was real. How are you gonna get cut that badly in sparring with fully padded headgear? That doesn't happen. All right. Again, maybe you'll get like a nick or a graze on like the bridge of your nose or between your eyes or something like that. But you're not gonna get like a like a full on gash above your eye sparring with like professional fully padded headgear, especially sparring with big gloves. It's not gonna happen. And you're sparring a guy shorter than you who probably doesn't hit that hard, like by comparison to the guys you've been fighting. Like, nah, I don't believe it was a real cut. That you don't have to agree. That's just my personal opinion. The cut is definitely real in the terms of that it exists, but maybe it was staged. Well, I mean, we don't know that, do we? We don't know that the cut was real because we haven't seen proof. Unless you've seen Tyson Fury in person and you've been able to examine the cut and like touch it yourself to know that it's not like makeup or prosthetics. And you know that you've not just seen it online, so it could easily be Photoshop. Like, you don't know if the cut's real. None of us do. But I just personally don't believe it is, you know? I just think it was again, look, I never at any stage of the build up, I never thought the fight would happen in February. I never did. And I thought that was pretty obvious. Some Gervonta Davis fan wrote on Twitter that he's a better fighter than Pacquiao. What that Gervonta's a better fighter than Pacquiao. Mate, Manny Pacquiao now at 45 years old would beat Gervonta Davis. I'm not even kidding. I've seen Pacquiao on the pads recently, and he's still got great speed. He's still got great stamina. You know, he's still relatively alert and fresh. And you know, he would to this day he would still beat Gervonta Davis in his prime. Gervonta Davis doesn't last 3 rounds like against like a 2009, 2010 Manny, like not even close. Pacquiao knocks him out easy. Team Fury trying to get people to believe Fury is scared of Usyk, and then people will bet on Usyk. Exactly, that's what's happening. And in the end, they will rig the fight for Fury with a corrupt ref and judges. Exactly. Look, I've said that from day one. They want people to bet on Usyk. Look, see if you go to some of the bookies in this country, Usyk right now is evens at the bookies. So how do you think the odds are gonna look in, like, 2 months' time when the fight's closer, when the media keeps talking and talking about Fury's cut and how scared he is and all that nonsense, that Usyk's probably gonna be the favourite because there's gonna be that many people betting on him. But by the time happens, when Fury's in shape, when he's ready, he's prepared, and like you say, they've got everything in place, the judges, the referees, and who knows, maybe even they pay Usyk off, who knows? By the time the fight happens, Usyk's gonna be the favorite and Fury's gonna win most likely, and the bookies are gonna make a lot of money. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. Fury wasn't ready for Usyk. I don't think he ever will be. And well, I think Fury will beat Usyk, and I've said that from day one. And people are gonna pretend to be surprised when that happens, but I think they're gonna think back in retrospect and be like, you know what, we should have really expected this. We should have read the signals and saw that this was gonna happen. You know? Yeah, it always something with Fury. I know exactly that they always mess the fans around and give us red errands and gatekeeping. It's just a lot of nonsense, man. Rate AJ's chin. I'd say he's got a bang average chin. I disagree that he's chinny. Yeah, I agree with that actually. I don't think AJ is chinny. Like he doesn't have a great chin or anything like that. It's not like a Marius Wack chin or something, but he's not as chinny as say like David Price or Seth Mitchell or someone like that. He can take a shot. I mean, he took some shots off of Povetkin, for example, and some shots off of Klitschko, which would have knocked a lesser fighter out. So I don't think his chin is that bad. What is quite bad about AJ is his recovery rate. When he gets hurt, it takes him like a good half a round to recover. But his chin itself, I don't think it's terrible. Like I've seen a lot worse. Seen a lot worse. Vlad would have likely beat Fury in the rematch, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. I think he would have, because I think he kind of figured him out towards the end of the first fight. But yeah, the rematch will never happen, so we'll never know. But I agree. I think he would have beaten him in the rematch. I do, because the rematch he would have been more aggressive and more assertive. I think Marku knocks out Congo. Congo last won in May 2022. Yeah, I favour Marku. I think he wins that fight. He's definitely had more momentum by far. Probably the bigger puncher too. I think he probably wins it. Pacquiao versus Ricky Hatton in 2024. Pacquiao by, I say, first round knockout. I think he blows him away. I don't think Ricky Hatton would ever stand a chance against Pacquiao, like any stage of his career, except maybe when Pacquiao was like a teenager, when he was like 16, 17 years old. Maybe then he'd have a chance. But since Pacquiao's been a fully grown man, I don't think Hatton ever beats him. And Ricky Hatton is basically a punching bag these days, just completely out of shape all the time, drug addict, alcoholic. Pacquiao's a guy who keeps himself in shape, and all year round he's pretty much near his fighting weight. So if they were to fight now, I think Pacquiao would be the much better athlete. He'd be much fresher, much fitter, and I think Pacquiao would win by knockout, probably in the first round. I'm not even kidding. Plus, Ricky Hatton's chin is completely shot, and Pacquiao still has like explosive speed and power. So I think he wins it easily if it were to happen. Tank Davis isn't even on Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez level, let alone Pacquiao. Yeah, I don't know. I put him on a similar level to Teofimo. I think both are complete hype jobs. Haney's probably slightly more technically astute than those two, but not by a whole lot. I mean, Pacquiao blows all three of them away on the same night, in his prime. It's not even close. Yeah, shout out to Shane. How's it going? Yeah, look, this was something that I had on my mind earlier. It's like something about the YTBC feels a little bit different. It's so corporate now, if you know what I mean. Like all the channels on the YouTube boxing community who are still around, who still cover boxing, they've either been completely and utterly buried by the algorithm to the point where there's just no point in even making content, or they've sold out to some sort of corporation. Because a lot of the big channels out there, like, or even channels that are not even that big, but they've got a consistent viewer base, a lot of them are corporate affiliated. They're always affiliated with some of these networks or one of these like big interview channels, there's always some sort of corporate affiliation. And if there isn't, you basically go nowhere. Whereas in the YTBC, it used to just be a bunch of random guys making content and collaborating and discussing the sport with each other. Everybody had sort of their own opinion, their own little cliques so that people used to join. And nowadays it's just none of that. There's no YouTube boxing community now. It's basically the mainstream boxing media, and then there's channels that are in some way affiliated with some sort of corporation that's affiliated with that mainstream media. There doesn't seem to be any independent content creators anymore, and it's the same all across YouTube. Like, YouTube doesn't really support independent content creators anymore. On YouTube, it's like if you wanna go anywhere, you've got to have a Patreon, you've gotta be bringing in money, you've gotta have, again, you've gotta have some sort of sponsorship, you gotta be involved with some sort of corporation, some way or somehow. It's just, man, it's a joke, it really is. Like, again, it's like, why even bother making videos if you're not on the payroll of one of these networks or channels? I just it's completely pointless. It's a corporation now. That's basically what it is. It doesn't seem like there's a community. I don't think there really is a YouTube boxing community. Maybe there never was. Maybe I'm remembering something that didn't exist, but it just doesn't seem the same anymore. Like, you go on YouTube, there used to be content every single day talking about boxing, and it wasn't like your Rummy's Corners and your what am I thinking of? Yeah, the Zone Boxing and all the corporation channels. Like, it was actual independent guys just coming on here talking about boxing. There was collaborations, there was people making their own sort of technical breakdowns. It's like all that stuff just feels so corporate now. It doesn't feel the same. Vlad said he would have let his hands go in the Fury rematch. Was the Vlad that fought AJ better, you think? Yeah, I think he was a little bit better against AJ because he actually, he actually trained properly and took it serious. But at the same time, he was 41 years old, and he was, a little bit, in my opinion, he was a little bit gun shy, a little bit shot worn, because what he did in the AJ fight, he was fully in control. And then when he had the knockdown and the perfect opportunity to go for the knockout, he did the same thing he did against Fury. He just froze up and stopped and didn't let his hands go, which was uncharacteristic. So I think the writing was on the wall. He was at the end of his career anyway, but I do think he would have won the rematch. I do think so. Well, speaking of AJ, there was a poll online saying who would win, AJ or Tommy Morrison. A lot of people voted Tommy Morrison because AJ was chinny, even though Michael Bent stopped him in the first round. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think AJ would KO Tommy Morrison. Tommy Morrison was extremely chinny, and he had extremely poor stamina. Like, he was a very good fighter. I'd say that he was a little bit more technically skilled than AJ, a little bit more athletic, but AJ was a lot bigger, hit a lot harder, and Tommy Morrison had poor stamina, and I think AJ would have knocked him out. I think his strength and his power would have been the difference, and I think AJ would have knocked him out. If Fury got hit with the same shot that Ruiz landed on AJ, I think Fury would go down, but he'd get back up. Yeah, Fury would have got back up, and I think he would have recovered quickly. Fury's recovery rate is a lot better. He kind of reminds me of Joe Calzaghe. When he would get dropped, he would recover almost immediately, and he'd be back to winning ways. But with AJ, like, when he gets dropped, he needs to like run and clinch and survive the rest of the round. Otherwise, he'll get taken out or stopped. I just don't think AJ has that recovery rate. I think his body kind of goes into shock when he gets hit. And you see that with a lot of these like bodybuilder types. When you get a lot of these heavyweight guys who are like really big, like roided up muscular bodybuilders, they don't seem to be able to recover quickly when they get hurt. I don't know why that is exactly. I don't really know the chemistry behind it or the physics behind it or whatever. I don't really get it, but I do think it's something with these big bodybuilders. When they get hurt, they don't recover well, or they don't recover quickly. I think Vlad would have dropped Fury and probably stopped him. Yeah, I think he would have probably dropped him multiple times and either stopped him or Fury would have just ran all night and survived and lost on points. I think that's probably what would have happened. Haney and Garcia are supposed to fight in April. Hmm. What, Ryan Garcia? Yeah, that's an that could be an interesting fight if it's real. Like if it's a real fight, it could be very interesting. Maybe even favor Ryan. Um, what's your opinion on Ade? I think I've watched him like one time and never watched him again. And what I heard after that is he basically works for DAZN now. So yeah, he's a corporate sellout probably. But good luck to him. Hey, he's probably making decent money from it. So hey, it's up to him. All the NPC boxing channels were getting the hype. We're getting hype for Fury Usyk. Then we're shocked when it got postponed again. Yeah. Well, I wasn't hyped about it. As you guys know, I don't really get hyped about anything these days, particularly boxing, because I know better. When I do get hyped about something, again, particularly boxing, it usually lets us down. Ade is definitely a very likable guy, if you ask me. Yeah, I don't know much about the guy. I've got nothing against him. What do you think of Lopez versus Ortiz? Didn't watch it, but went exactly as I predicted based on what I've heard. I said if you saw any of my comment sections that I commented on in regards to that fight, I said from day one, either Ortiz gets robbed on the cards or he dives. That's it. Those are the only outcomes that I could foresee for that fight. So yeah, here's what it is. I like how frequently you change your profile pictures. Yeah, I like having a different one for the streams. I think it makes it more interesting. It's a bit fun. It's kind of my personality. I just rewatched Kovalev versus Hopkins, a very satisfying beatdown. Yeah, I've watched that a couple times, that fight. Like, that was a situation where I think in that particular fight, Kovalev showed how you beat these like dirty spoiler type fighters. You get behind the jab, stick it to their body, cut off the ring, but don't commit to anything. Don't like overly commit to what you're doing. And what Kovalev did in there was he didn't allow Hopkins to basically dictate the pace because Hopkins wants you like going after him and being overly aggressive and frustrated so he can clinch you and headbutt you and basically just bore you to death essentially and bore the crowd to death and make the fight a snooze fest and pick up points by landing little sneaky shots inside, hit you low on the blind side of the ref, clinch excessively. But what Kovalev did was he kind of kept Hopkins at just the right range to keep him under control and just kept pecking away with a jab. And I think that was a fantastic performance. That was probably one of his best like performances from a technical point of view. Like Kovalev was fantastic that night. He really was. I like to see more collab live streams in the YTBC. Yeah, I'd like to see more of them and all. I certainly would. And at least if it's from like channels I like. Not if it's from any of these like gay boy NPC channels. Prime Vlad would have stopped AJ early and stopped Fury late. Yeah, yeah, because Prime Vlad was a lot more aggressive than he became in the later part of his career, where he was obviously older and more cautious. Like, if he'd have gotten AJ in that position early on, he would have probably just jumped in with a left hook and took him out immediately. And as for Fury, I think Fury's like survival instincts would have got him through it. I think Fury would have, well, it would have got him to the later rounds anyway. Like, Fury would have probably got dropped a couple of times. He'd have got up, he'd have survived and spoiled, clinched. And I think he would have made it late. Fury would have always been a difficult fight and an awkward fight in that sense. So I do agree with you there, yeah. I think AJ sometimes get unnecessary hate at times. I definitely think, look, there's a lot of people who are who hyped the shit out of AJ early on. Like, see when he first turned pro, like he had so much push from the boxing media talking about, he would KO any heavyweight in 3 rounds and stuff like that. And in like he was better than all the old time greats. That was how the UK boxing media kind of marketed him. They were calling him like the best heavyweight of all time before he'd even done anything in his career. And I think it pissed a lot of people off. and it turned a lot of people against AJ. So when he got exposed, a lot of people felt vindicated. And I do think they kind of took it a little bit too far with AJ, because every time now he has a fight where he looks even remotely flawed, people call him a complete bum and a hype job and say he's useless. And, he would get knocked out in the first round by like anybody. Uh, you know, I do think people take it, a little bit too far with AJ, but you got to be, you got to just call it what it is. I mean, the guy was overrated. He was. But that doesn't mean he's complete crap, It doesn't mean that at all. People get blinded by nostalgia. I would pick AJ over most 90s heavyweight. Yeah, based on size and strength and power, he would probably beat most of the heavyweights from past eras, especially guys like from the 70s and 80s, because those guys were just way too small. Yeah, people are really jumping on the AJ is fragile and bad narrative, yeah. But it's interesting because these same people, when he looks good against Otto Wallin, they're all saying he's back, he's back in title contention. He's better than he ever was. It's like I've talked about before at length about how reactionary these boxing fans are. What do you think would have happened if Roy Jones had fought Lennox after he beat John? Roy would have gotten knocked clean out inside of 3 rounds. That's what would have happened, man. He'd have got destroyed. Look, Roy Jones, he was nothing at heavyweight, let's be honest. He was just far too small, you know? Y yeah, yeah, they got hyped for Fury versus Usyk, but there were people that suspected Fury would find a way out, and he did, yeah. But again, as I said, I don't even think the cut was real. I think it was always gonna happen on a different date. Have you blocked me? No, no, I haven't blocked you. Haven't blocked you. Tiafimo is so bad, it's actually incredible that people think he's beating elite fighters legitimately. Mate, I'm sick and tired of even talking about Tiafimo. Sick and tired of it. Because what else can I really say? I've covered it all in the past. Sup, Nordic. Yo, shout out to Fight Film. Good to see you, bro. Bodybuilders' heart and lungs are overtaxed due to unnatural muscle mass and cannot support the brain with blood oxygen as well, I think. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually, because again, it's like it's excess muscle. So basically it's just weighing you down. So your heart and your lungs must be, as you say, they're working overtime basically. So they can't support your muscles and give you the necessary energy to recover essentially. It makes a lot of sense. Yo, shout out to Bruce. Good to see you, bro. But yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I've noticed there aren't many prediction videos or channels that make predictions anymore. Yeah, I know that Del Boy still makes a lot of predictions. He predicts basically every major fight, but aside from him, I can't even think of any. I mean, I know I don't really do it anymore because I just can't be bothered. If Andre Ward ever fought Bernard Hopkins, they would have had to hold the fight in the UFC with MMA rules. They absolutely should, because all that fight would be like, could you imagine that fight? It would literally just be 12 rounds of both guys holding and headbutting. That would be the whole fight. Yard performance was Kovalev's best. Did better than Artur and showed best defense and stamina ever. Yeah, that was a very good performance. Like physically, I think he was past his prime then. I don't think Kovalev was like as explosive or as fit then as he was in the past. But like from a technical point of view, his jab that night was fantastic. Like where he was jabbing Yard to the chest and just slipping his shots and getting them in there. Like that was a really good performance. And the recovery that he showed in that fight, where he got hurt in that 8th round, I thought he showed a lot of experience to get through it, if you know what I mean. He recovered well. And even towards the end of the round, he took back control. And I thought he did very well in that fight. Very good performance. And it's a little bit suspicious, as you've talked about in the past. It's suspicious how he went from that performance to looking like absolute garbage against Canelo, like just forgetting how to box. Yeah, it's shady, that one. Maybe the very low body fat level means a lack of quick energy resource in a dangerous situation regarding the bodybuilder heavyweights. Yeah, because because you need a certain amount of blood sugar and a certain amount of like fat stored up in order to give you the energy to push you through like an anaerobic situation. So that does make a lot of sense. Like you see that with fighters who are very, very low body fat and they end up having very poor stamina. Like we've seen it time and time again, you know. Look up Fedor Emelianenko, the former MMA champion. Yeah, I've watched several of his fights. Good fighter. He was muscular with some bit of extra body fat, yet he never had a problem with stamina. True. Same with Tim Sylvia. If you've ever watched Tim Sylvia, you know he was like kind of a chubby heavyweight MMA guy, but he had a lot of stamina. Like that guy could grab and just hold you against the cage for an entire fight, and like his grip strength was so good. Like he could literally just drain the energy out of you just by holding you. Like I saw his fight with Mariusz Pudzianowski, the world's strongest man, who was obviously like that guy was built like a tank. He was massive, and he was actually out muscled and basically capitulated against Tim Sylvia, who was like a big fat guy. Well, not a fat guy, but a guy who had a lot of excess fat, if you know what I mean, that he knew how to use. Basically, he carried it well. I watched the Pascal Hopkins gloves are off recently. Yeah, that was hilarious. That's got to be the best gloves are off. Like I still maintain to this day that that was the best gloves are off episode. The Pascal versus Hopkins one was too funny. Yeah, after the Olympics and the David Price losses to Tony Thompson, I think the British fans and media were looking for their next Neo. But I definitely rate AJ over Price. Yeah, that's just again that's just the nature of the boxing media, particularly in Britain. But they hype these guys way too much, way too early, and it puts so much pressure on them, so they don't really have a chance to develop into the best versions of themselves. You know, I actually think David Price was a bigger puncher than AJ. I think Price had harder straight punches. I think AJ's hooks and uppercuts are better, but I think Price had a better straight right hand. I think his straight right hand was a better punch than AJ's punches, you know? What about Roy against a shot Mike Tyson post Ruiz? Do you know what? I still think Mike Tyson might have overpowered him. Like Roy might have been able to outbox him for a few rounds with his speed, but Tyson was so much stronger, so much physically and naturally bigger that I think he would have broken Roy down and stopped him. I think probably by like the fifth round to like the eighth round or something. So like mid round stoppage, I think, kind of like Glenn Johnson did. I think it would have been quite similar. That Wallin win don't show me much, but expose Fury's ass juice resume so much. Yeah. Oh yeah. Showtime Boxing is done, isn't it? Because they spent so long trying to promote these Ameribums and losing money. You know, same as HBO really, trying to promote Canelo and Ward. I'd love to see the Fritz Sudenek train Vladimir versus Tyson. That'd be a war. That'd be an absolute war. Either guy could get knocked out in that one. I'd favor Vladimir though. Who would you want to win between AJ and Fury? Do you know what? I would want AJ to win, and the only reason why is because I've already seen AJ lose several times. So it would be more interesting to see Fury lose, you know? So yeah, it would be inconsequential if AJ lost because everyone expects it, you know? Man, missing the Thunderdome panel. Do you have any news on Anthony? I've not spoken to Anthony in months. I don't know what's going on, but I seen him comment recently on a video. I think it was one of Precise's videos, but aside from that, I've not seen him in months and months. Most of these super muscular bodybuilders would be out of breath just walking down the street. Yeah, like I was saying, it's excess muscle. It doesn't do a lot for you, you know? Like it's all well and good being big, muscular, and strong, but if you're just like pumped up to the point where you can't even like wipe your own ass, I mean, it's not going to help you at all in life, is it? You might look good posing for the camera, but you know, if you can't function as a normal functioning human being, what's the point? You know, and you certainly won't be a world class boxer. You know, Anthony Yard versus Callum Smith. I think Yard would win a clear decision. Personally, I think Smith would beat Yard, and I think the reason why is I think at long range, Smith would be able to figure him out. I think he'd use his high guard and he would kind of tuck up nicely early on. And I think Yard would have some success and would maybe win some of the early rounds. But as that fight goes on, Yard would tire badly because Yard has pretty poor stamina and he has one of these bodybuilder physiques. And Callum Smith has pretty good stamina and has good boxing fundamentals. So I think he would figure him out. And I would go with Callum Smith by a close but clear unanimous decision. Hit the like button, people. Yeah, pound that like button. Pound that like button. And don't forget to drop the killer super chat. The main thing I remember from the Kovalev versus Yard fight was Tunde's awful corner instructions. Yeah, lines in the camp. Lines in the camp. Yeah, that was embarrassing. I mean, I can't for the life of me think of a single time I've ever heard Tunde Ajayi give any sort of technical advice in the corner. It's always like chanting and shouting and chimping out and talking about lines in the camp and all that. Like, I've never heard him ever tell a fighter what to do from a technical point of view, you know? He's more of a motivator in the corner. And it wouldn't motivate me. I'd just tell him to shut up and then hire a better trainer. Yeah, Ward versus Hopkins, the ultimate battle of veteran tactics. I think if Tyson Fury lost on points, they would have robbed Usyk. Yeah, I don't think Usyk will get a decision. Fury seems to be too well connected for that. You know, he's got Daniel Kinahan and apparently the Saudis in his corner. So, yeah, I don't think that they would give Usyk the decision if it was close. Nordic, what do you think of Holyfield as a fighter? Holyfield was a very good fighter, very talented, but he was also a horrible cheater. Like, his excessive clinching, his headbutts and all that were just horrendous. And the dude was a science experiment. He was very chemically enhanced, you know. So, you know, there's a lot there that people could say, well, he got away with a lot, you know, a lot of things that other fighters wouldn't have, you know. Yeah, one of the most roided fighters in history, no doubt. I think that's one of them like open secrets in boxing that Holyfield was roided up to the gills. You know, he was definitely roided, no doubt about it. Not that I care, but he was a dirty fighter too. You know, Kovalev was an animal and lost that desire for boxing after the Ward fiascos. He became a mercenary afterwards. Yeah, because that's why he took a dive against Canelo, and also awful, like, obvious dive. You know. Daniel Cormier is another MMA fighter that had a similar build to Fedor and also had a lot of stamina. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. You want to have the right balance. Like, you don't want to be like obese, obviously. You don't want to be like an Andy Ruiz type. You want to have some like muscle in your upper body. You want to have good, like, strong, muscular legs and muscular arms. But around your midsection, it's good to have a bit of body fat there to keep you safe and to act as an energy reserve, you know? And I think that's what a lot of these MMA guys have. Again, guys like Fedor, guys like Tim Sylvia, you know, like Daniel Cormier. Here's what it is. That's how these guys stay strong and fit. Sergey training for Yard was really training for Canelo payday. That's probably his best camp. Yeah, he wanted to make sure he won that fight so that he could secure the Canelo fight, because that was essentially his pension, that fight, wasn't it? That's when he got his retirement payday. So, yeah, we saw what Kovalev can do, even at that stage of his career, when he actually has a goal to work towards and takes a fight seriously. It's a shame we never got that version of him against the Canelo, you know, against Canelo for the payday. It's a shame. It's a shame that David Price is retired, because Price versus Hellenius would be a good fight. Chinny heavyweights that can crack, yeah. That would be a good fight. And those guys have history too, because Hellenius beat Price 2 times in the amateurs. So that would be an interesting fight that they could build, you know. Guys have got history. Yeah, Vlad versus Hay was a good one too. The flashy flash. Yes, with earrings and the flashy flash. David Hay wanna be? Actually, I wanna be. Muscular guys that did have stamina. Yeah, Timothy Bradley was one. He had great stamina. Holyfield as well, great stamina. But again, we've discussed that with Holyfield, haven't we? Pascal's windmilling and pretend hip injury was outstanding. Yeah, yeah. When Pascal was like when he was mimicking Kovalev's, oh sorry, when he was mimicking Hopkins's defense, that was hilarious. Like he did like the perfect like demonstration of what Hopkins's defense was like. That was incredible. That had me in stitches. I'll need to watch that again. That was so funny. Donovan Ruddock was even shocked at how strong Mike Tyson was. Yeah, he was, yeah. Fun fact, Ide Rama Albanian Prime Minister used to box when he was young. Oh, did he now? Interesting. Was he any good? Mike Tyson versus Mark Hunt is in the works, apparently, no joke. Yeah. Yeah, Daniel Cormier, strong, wasn't he? Yeah, a lot of these MMA guys are like I was saying before, that they've got the perfect like physique for athletes. A lot of them have, like more so than boxers have, because obviously they need a lot more strength than boxers. Because MMA, if you don't have upper body strength in MMA, you're screwed. You know. What do you think the Jugger Bum? Who do you think the Jugger Bum should fight after he beats Cash the Cannibal Ali? Um, do you know, I wouldn't mind seeing Joyce versus Wilder. I think that's a fight that makes perfect sense. You know, because they were talking about sticking Wilder on the undercard of AJ Ngannou. So I'm assuming that the Saudis want him back for a fight. So why not stick him in with Joyce? It's an easy fight to make. Why not? You know, that way it's kind of like a loser leaves town. By the way, I think Joyce would beat Wilder. I think Joyce would stop him late in a real fight. How would Fury cope with a loss? He'd probably go into a deep depression, but then again, he'd probably do that anyway. I mean, Fury can't even cope with a win, never mind a loss. He can't cope with a win. Fritz Sudnek and Uli Wegner, two of the best pro trainers of all time, in my opinion. Yeah, they were definitely the two best German trainers, without a doubt. They were great trainers. I called him Cash Cannibal. Yeah, yeah, Cash. That's a good nickname, Cash the Cannibal Ali. Roy should have fought Tarver and Mikuchevsky and cleaned out 175 before Ruiz. Yeah, he didn't want to fight Mikuchevsky though. Ducked him for years because he would have probably had to go to Germany, and he wouldn't have been able to be roided up over there. And Tarver was a guy who just basically had his number, you know, and yeah, had him beaten basically. Beat him all 3 times, in my personal opinion. Holyfield was a natural super middleweight. Yeah, yeah, he was on all sorts of roids, wasn't he? Whatever happened to Tommy Fury, but left after nearly losing to KSI? I don't know anything about Tommy Fury. Never watched a single one of his fights. Never watched them. Holyfield was roided even at cruiserweight, according to rumors. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Like I suspect he was roided his entire pro career, maybe even some of his amateur career. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. Andy Ruiz hasn't fought for a year and a half. What on earth is he doing? Yeah. Do you know, if truth be told, I think after that Luis Ortiz fight, I think Andy Ruiz, to me, there was just that look on his face after that fight. I think he realized that boxing at that level just isn't for him anymore. He just doesn't have the desire anymore. He never really did, if truth be told. I mean, Andy Ruiz, all you got to do is look at the guy, look at his attitude. I'm not just saying this because he's fat. Like, just look at his overall demeanor, his overall attitude. Like, he just isn't interested in developing and getting better. Like, he's just a guy who, to me, he's in it for the money. He's always been in it for the money. And I think he's just waiting for someone to offer him a big payday, because he took a beating in that fight. Even though he got the win, he took a lot of punishment, took a beating. And that was against a shot Luis Ortiz. So I think Andy Ruiz knows that his time is very limited in boxing, and he just wants to get a payday. He's probably waiting for Anthony Joshua or Wilder or someone to offer him a payday so he can retire. It is what it is. They disowned Tommy after KSI beat the steroids out of his body. Did he actually lose to KSI? I didn't watch it, so I've no idea. Do you guys care about Haney versus Garcia? It could be a good fight if it's real, if it's a real fight, could be a good fight. I'd love to see young Lou Ferrigno boxing, 6'7", 315 pounds of muscle, ripped, beat some bums probably. Yeah, he could probably beat like a few like low level journeymen. I can imagine. Like a good example, you look at that guy, Halthor Bjornsson, the world's strongest man. That guy, he trained for quite a while to box, and you look at that guy, he's not your average strongman. Like a lot of these strongmen types, like if you look at Eddie Hall, for example, the guy's just a monster. He's like a big, like wide, like just behemoth of a man, like a big tank. He's just built huge. But if you look at him trying to box, he can't even throw a straight punch because he's too big and too muscular, too bulky. He can't throw a punch, so he can't compete in boxing. But if you look at like Bjornsson's got like a tall, long, like slender physique. He's got like a Vladimir Klitschko type physique. So he actually can box. And you see, he's actually had some success. He's had some unlicensed fights, and he's actually looked pretty good. Like obviously by strongman standards, he's looked pretty good in a boxing ring. Now, if you take a guy like Lou Ferrigno, I don't. Again, Lou Ferrigno's tall and he's probably naturally quite slender, but he was a weightlifter, so he built up a lot of muscle. But if Lou Ferrigno were to train specifically for boxing and dedicate his life to it, I guarantee you he could win some fights just based on size and strength and power. He could probably be like a domestic level pro heavyweight. I could see it. A lot of these big bodybuilder types, if they train specifically for boxing, they could do all right at a certain level. If Kovalev actually tried to win against Canelo, he'd have stopped him inside 2 rounds. I agree. I think 2 rounds is being generous, if truth be told. I wouldn't be surprised if he got him out in the first round. Vlad was like a KGB officer, a KGB officer in the head-to-head. Like he psychologically dissected him, didn't he? Like completely dominated him. You made that tall blue shirt guy gas out in sparring. Yeah, I did. I did one time anyway. Do you know how I did that though? It was with my right hand to the body. What I would do is I would kind of tuck up behind my guard, bend my knees, and then I'd whip in a right hand to the body. And usually my sparring partners don't see that coming. I'm quite good at like sometimes you'll see me miss it and I'll throw myself off balance and I'll look quite clumsy. But see if I'm able to land that shot, I'm usually able to disguise it well and they don't see it coming. And if you get caught with a right hand to the body and you're not tense up, it makes you gas out really quickly. So that's what I try to do in sparring sometimes. Hellenius was underrated at his prime. He would have been good opponent for an old Vladimir without injuries. Yeah, I do think Hellenius, in my personal opinion, he could have developed into a much better fighter had he actually had an easier time as a pro because he got injured very early in his career. He broke both of his hands and he injured his shoulder badly. And I think without that, he wouldn't have had so many long layoffs and he would have been able to build up a resume and build up his experience because he was pretty good in the early stage of his career. He was a good prospect. He had devastating power in both hands, pretty good stamina. I mean, you saw in the Chisora fight, he went 12 rounds pretty easily. So I think that version of Hellenius, he could have developed into a very good heavyweight contender. I'm not saying he would have been champion, but I think he would have been a very good contender had he developed properly. Yeah, I expected Tommy Fury to completely outbox KSI, and he didn't. And it was also funny that he couldn't outmuscle KSI in the clinch when he's way bigger. Yeah, maybe KSI is just like physically stronger. Maybe he does like a lot of like weight training and that. I don't know. I don't know. I'd need to actually watch the fight to know. Wilder is coming back, so look out for Wilder versus Mark Demori or Dave Allen. He won't fight Joyce. Yeah. Yeah, what if Wilder's coming back, he'd want like an easy dive, like a first round knockout. We need Wilder versus Zelenov too. Yeah, Zelenov would just hit him and then claim he won just because he landed a shot, you know? Just like the first fight, you know? Wilder should fight Jake Paul for so many reasons. Yeah, why not? Could you imagine like how they would build that fight, Wilder versus Jake Paul? I mean, both guys are frauds as far as I'm concerned. So why not? Let's make it Wilder versus Jake Paul. David Haye versus Steve Cunningham. To me, that's a hard fight to call because I think Steve Cunningham is a better boxer than Haye, and I think he would outbox Haye pretty easily. But Haye has that power and that explosive speed where if he caught you one time, he can drop you. And Steve Cunningham was a guy who was chinny. He would get dropped. Like he would recover well and he would come back well in fights, but he would pretty much always get dropped at world level. And I think Haye would drop him and probably even drop him several times. But Cunningham might be able to make it the distance. But I think the knockdowns might get Haye the win. Like I think Steve Cunningham would win rounds and he would outbox Haye, but Haye would catch him at some point and would knock him down. And I think he would probably win based on the knockdowns, probably on points. So yeah, I go with David Haye on points. Roy didn't want to leave America and Darius didn't want to leave Germany. Nobody ducked. Well, I've seen no evidence that Darius wouldn't have fought Roy in America, you know. I've seen no evidence of that. Maybe you're right. I don't know that, but I haven't heard that he didn't want to fight in America. But I do know he generated more money than Roy did in Germany, you know. So he was the A side. Hellenius is frustrating because he's one of those guys that wasted their talent after a point, like Galotta and Bo. We saw that they were very good, but they lost their desire. Yeah. Yeah, and I think injuries had a lot to do with it with Hellenius, you know. Injuries and promotional issues basically ruined his career. Especially Galotta. Shame we never got to see him truly mentally healthy in his physical prime. Switch hitter, beautiful combinations, good power, head movement, footwork. Yeah, Galotta had good skills. He was a talented guy. You could tell that he had a good amateur background and he had a lot of natural talent, but you know, the guy was just mentally very erratic, wasn't he? And he was unpredictable and did a lot of stupid things, you know, wasted his talent. It is what it is. It's an old tale in boxing, isn't it? Happens to the best of them, you know. Ruiz will have one more comeback fight against their fringe contender and lose. Do you know what? That wouldn't surprise me one bit. Like Andy Ruiz losing to any like top 30 heavyweight wouldn't surprise me at this stage. I honestly think he's pretty shot, and I don't think he's that interested in developing anymore, you know. Lou Ferrigno would be exactly the same thing as Ed Too Tall Jones in the boxing ring, and we saw how that worked out. Yeah, well, technically we didn't see it because I I haven't been able to find any footage. Like I actually tried to find footage of that years ago, the Too Tall Jones boxing career, because I remember I heard about it on the Fight Night games. I think Teddy Atlas, who commentates on those games, he mentions Too Tall Jones. And I saw his record on BoxRec, but I was never able to find any footage of any of his fights, and it made me wonder if they were real. But there's plenty of newspaper articles about his career and fights he had, but I haven't been able to find any of them. Bjornsson would probably beat Wilder. Do you know what? That wouldn't surprise me. That honestly wouldn't. Like, see if Hafthor Bjornsson was able to beat Wilder in a fight. That wouldn't surprise me. It honestly wouldn't. Prime Darius would have beat Jones, especially if it was held in Germany, where the ref and judges would have been neutral. Yeah, I think so. If it was in Germany, like Roy would have been. First of all, Roy wouldn't have been allowed to juice up, you know. And also, it would have been officiated fairly in Germany. In Germany. Yeah, Thor is a much better boxer than Eddie Hall. We saw that in their fight. Yeah, Eddie Hall he was kind of embarrassing, if truth be told. Like, Eddie Hall is obviously he's a great strong man. Like, that guy is incredibly strong. Like, I don't know how it's even possible. Obviously, we do know steroids and shit and like just all sorts of training, but like, how is it even possible for someone to be as strong as him But in that fight, he just like because of his physique, like I mentioned before, he couldn't even throw a straight punch. He couldn't even throw a hook. He was so tight and so stiff that he was literally having to just swing his whole body weight behind a punch. And you saw that when he did land a shot on Thor, it hurt him because Eddie Hall's obviously so heavy-handed that if he lands a shot, it can hurt you. But his technique was so bad, and he was so clumsy and uncoordinated that it was literally like watching an obese, like old woman trying to throw a punch. That's what it was like a morbidly obese, like 90-year-old woman trying to throw a punch, like in terms of the technique. Whereas if you look at Bjornsson, he actually did look like a professional boxer. He had a good physique for boxing. He had good punching technique. He had a good trainer in his corner. He was being trained by Billy Nelson, who's a good Scottish trainer, you know. And you know, you could tell that Bjornsson had drilled boxing, that he'd been doing pad work, that he'd sparred, that he'd had fights before. Yeah, I know he'd had like low level fights before then. I think he'd had like unlicensed fights and stuff like that. So yeah, that fight was a complete mismatch. Like it was two guys who were obviously some of the best in the world in their own sport, strongman, but you had one guy who was way more athletic and was more suited to try other sports, and that was, of course, Bjornsson. You know, just a much better athlete and a much better fighter. You know, Prime Darius doesn't beat James Toney. I disagree. I think he does beat James Toney. I think he would beat James Toney pretty easily, if truth be told, stylistically. I think he would do the same thing to James Toney that Montel Griffin did, or that what's that other guy's name? Dave Tiberi. I think he would do the same thing. Thor Bjornsson versus Chris Billum Smith. Do you know what? If that fight were to happen, let's say they fought at heavyweight, I think for the first few rounds, Bjornsson would be very dangerous, particularly from long range. But I think if Chris Billum Smith could survive the first few rounds, he would probably stop Bjornsson late once he tires and struggles with the pace, or he would just outwork him and beat him on points. So I would give Bjornsson a very good puncher's chance early on. But I think the longer the fight goes on, the more it suits Chris Billum Smith. I think Chris Billum Smith would most likely win. That's the way I see it. YTBC Golden Era was around 2019, unrivaled. Johnny Thunderdome Nordic. Yeah, that was pretty good because we always had like crazy ass panels back then, and it was always a lot of fun, you know, really was. My spidey senses are tingling. I'm getting a hard on. He was gonna hit me. Yeah, yeah, that was a funny face off. Hey, and Klitschko. That was probably the second funniest after the Hopkins Pascal one. You know, I agree. I think Hellenius would have beaten Joshua prime for prime. Hellenius was a lot more. He was a lot more technically astute in his prime than Joshua, and you saw when they fought. Even a shot Hellenius gave him problems with the jab, and had him open for the right hand at times. You know. Would you fight on Misfits? I certainly would if they offered it to me, but I don't think they would. You know, but yeah, I would if they offered it to me. KSI star jumps and morning after the fight was more entertaining than the fight itself. Yeah, I probably won't watch it then. Probably. Is Rummy corporate? Well, he certainly appeals to normies, which doesn't appeal to me, you know. What do you think of David Hay as a person? I think he was very arrogant when he was an active. Yeah, David Hay was always a prick. Never liked him. Like he was a talented fighter. I've never denied that. He was a big puncher, fast hands, you know, great like twitch muscles. He was so sharp, very unorthodox, very difficult to train for. You know, he had a very unique style, but he was a complete bell end of a person. Never liked him. Yeah, David Hay is a degenerate. KSI has great abs, and that's about it. Doesn't mean he's juiced up. Yeah. Well, he's got great abs, so that means he's a great fighter, right? That's what normies think, you know. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Rummy called Ward one of the greatest body punchers after Kovalev too. No integrity. Now, do you think young Rummy's corner? Do you think he's really that stupid that he thinks those were legitimate body shots? Of course he doesn't. He's just literally just he's placating to the normies to get views. He's living off YouTube basically, you know. Oh yeah, you're on about Andrew Gallotta. Yeah, he should have won them fights against what'd you call him, against Riddick Bowe, but he blew it. He blew it by hitting him in the balls. He shouldn't have done that. But if we're gonna go by the Andre Ward Rummy's corner standard, what we should be saying is that Andrew Gallotta is the greatest body puncher in heavyweight boxing history, and he was the true heavyweight champion that night. So yeah, justice for Andrew Gallotta. Hashtag justice for Andrew Gallotta. Darius did want to leave Germany, but they wanted him to have 2 or 3 fights on HBO to build the fight for a fraction of what he got in Germany. Roy was the B-side. He needed to travel. Exactly. Like, Roy was never a big draw at that stage of his career. He was literally fighting on, like, small hall shows in America. And HBO were like, hyping the shit out of Roy. But they were like, he wasn't generating a return. Whereas Darius Mikulchevsky, he was doing like huge numbers in Germany, like on European TV networks. He was doing huge numbers, and he was doing like huge, like he had massive box office appeal. They were filling out arenas in Germany, so that fight only made sense in Germany from a financial point of view. But like I was saying before, Roy would have had to do drug testing, and he would have had to fight under the rules, you know. So it is what it is. It was never going to happen. I remember after the Eddie Hall fight, people kept changing his name on Wikipedia from the beast to the crab. That's funny. Who would you pick to win between Antonio Tarver and Tavoris Cloud if they fought? I go with Tarver on points pretty easily. Like, Cloud would have his moments because Cloud was quite strong and durable, and he had a good high guard. But I think Tarver would keep turning him all night. He'd outbox him, kind of like he did to Glenn Johnson in the second fight. And I think Tarver would win on points pretty clearly, pretty easily, pretty clearly. You said Wilder's power isn't real, but I know for a fact that 90% of heavyweights couldn't render Artur Spilka unconscious for several minutes. Well, Artur Spilka was knocked out in 2 rounds by Derek Chisora. He was knocked out in 3 rounds by Adam Kalnatsky. And I wouldn't exactly call either one of those guys like concussive punchers by like world level heavyweight standards. So I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure if Vladimir Klitschko caught Artur Spilka, he'd put him to sleep. I'm pretty sure about that, you know. Roy was getting paid well to fight bums or old men. Yeah, he was. Yeah, Roy knew where his bread was buttered in America. He knew he could fight on these shows, get an easy opponent, and get paid millions of dollars when he wasn't really bringing in a return. He was kind of like Terence Crawford in that sense. He knew exactly where he was getting paid, where his bread was buttered. You know, where he could build up his bank balance and not really have to take risks. You know, that was what Roy was doing. You know. He as good as admitted it too. Eddie fought and trained like an idiot for Bjornsson. Yeah, I don't really think Eddie knew how to train for boxing. Again, it's very, very difficult. You take a guy from strongman and try to have him compete in boxing. The diet is different. You know, the training techniques are different. Everything is so different. Like, again, I've been doing weightlifting myself, and I've been trying to like gradually increase my deadlift, and it is so different to boxing. Like, it's nowhere near as fast paced. It's nowhere near as like aerobic, and everything. Like, even the diet for it, everything is different. So when you take a guy who is used to training like that, you know, a guy who's doing deadlifts, squats, overhead press, shoulder press, all that sort of stuff, you know, bench press. Somebody who's just everything he does is about strength and about brute strength and about bulking up to be as strong as you possibly can. And then you have a guy do a sport like boxing, which is more of like a series of short anaerobic bursts. It's so different. It's a very, very different training situation, you know, and it's difficult to kind of reconcile the two. Whereas, like I said before about Bjornsson, he's a guy who'd boxed before and he trained boxing for a while, you know, with a professional boxing coach and had experience of boxing. So It was just a complete mismatch, that fight. It really was. Didn't James Toney lose to an Italian guy who had a very basic style? Yeah, that I was talking about that earlier, Dave Tiberi. And he got dominated in that fight. And I think Dariusz Mikuchevsky would have done the exact same thing. He would have just outworked and outlanded him for 12 rounds. And yeah, Dave Tiberi won that. Yeah, James Toney was a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like I'm not saying he wasn't good. James Toney was a great fighter, but he was beatable, and I don't think he was as great as Mikuchevsky. I think Mikuchevsky would have won if they fought. Mark Brillon told Wilder how to set up the KO. Yeah, against Spilker. Yeah, he probably did. Darius beat two guys that beat Tony, but he couldn't beat Tony. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That Darius beat Montel Griffin, who beat Tony. So again, I don't see if someone like Montel Griffin or someone like Dave Tiberi can beat Tony. I don't see why at that stage of his career, Darius Mikuchevsky couldn't have done the same in even more one-sided fashion. Yeah, I prefer Hey to Bellew. I would agree with that. Yeah, without a doubt. Tony Bellend Bellew. I laughed when he spread his legs to be ready to be taken by Usyk. Yeah, right in front of Eddie Hearn too, right behind him. HBO told you Tony didn't train for Roy right before the fight. Yeah, because that was Tony's problem. Tony just didn't train for fights. I mean, he trained for some fights, but so often in his career, he was basically just in fat camp to make the weight, and he barely did any training. So when he showed up on the night, he'd be a slob and he'd be out of shape, and again, it was the same situation with the Roy fight. Just didn't look like he wanted to know. Galata was just an insane guy. Yeah, he was crazy. He was insane, no doubt about it. Where was I? Sorry, I'm losing my place here. Sometimes I get that many comments at once, I end up losing where I am. Wilder slept Spilker with one punch. It took Chisora a good few punches to render him unconscious. Yeah, but Chisora did it in 2 rounds. I mean, come on, man. He did it in 2 rounds, and it took Wilder 9 rounds to get Spilker out of there, which, when you consider what happened to Spilker, aside from that, I'd say that's pretty embarrassing. Hayward's just a funny troll and a showman. Bellew is just annoying at this point, yeah. At least Hay would be quite funny on occasion. Like, he would say things like, "It'll be as one-sided as a gang rape" and stuff like that, which was hilarious. like some of the one-liners that Hay would come out with, like, "Don't go in the ambulance with your brother." They were quite funny and quite creative and quite memorable. But Tony Bellew is just a stuck record. He says the same shit all the time, and he's just annoying. "Oh, hey, you're the short, fat guy that talks a lot of nonsense." Yep, absolutely, that's me, and that's why you're here, because you can't get enough of it. That's why you're here. That's why you're on my channel and I'm not on yours. God bless you. Thoughts on Froch on fighting? You're on about Froch's YouTube channel, yeah. Mate, do you really think I'm going to sit and watch Carl Froch's YouTube channel? Really? Yeah, no thank you. I'd rather drink a gallon of Diet Iron Brew, if truth be told. I've watched Kovalev Ward 1 about 10 times and can't see how people think Ward won. Yeah, no chance. It was a clear robbery. Clear. Every single round was atrocious. It was just Ward running, clinching, spoiling, and Kovalev just playing with him, essentially. Nordic dislikes Froch. Maybe he doesn't like Froch's arrogance. Yeah, that goes back a long way. I'm not covering it again. I liked Hayes' trash talk and enjoyed his fights very much. Very talented fighter. Sometimes he was annoying, but I prefer Hay instead of pricks like Ben Whittaker. You mean Wallace? Triple B, like was calling him Wallace. His eyes are too close together. That's too funny, man. Jeez, Gromit. There's no use prevaricating about the bush. Remember when Ward beat Kovalev and the LDBC were telling people to get over it? They're such scummer, yeah. But it's interesting because when they think a guy gets robbed, they bitch and moan about it for years. Like they did with Wilder losing to Fury. They spent years trying to overturn the result and talking about egg weights and illegal tactics and all this stuff. But then when it came to that fight, it's, oh no, you need to get over it. You're salty. Andre Nutcracker Ward, yeah. Froch uses his channel to big himself up. I've lost count of the amount of time he said, I beat 11 world champions. Did Froch never beat 11 world champions? What's he talking about? That's bullshit, by the way. He never beat 11 world champions. I don't think he did anyway. Is he talking about like the amateurs? Because I don't think he beat 11 world champions as a pro. Well, they should get over Wilder being exposed 3 times and stop making excuses. Exactly. They're just hypocrites, you know? The Klitschko's used to watch Darius spar and were inspired by his success. The guy was a rock star in Germany. Yeah, he was. Yeah, because they were part of the same promotional company, weren't they? Universum. Like the Klitschko's and Mikuchevsky were part of that same company. So that makes sense. Yeah, don't forget the 90,000 at Wembley. Yeah. Yeah, he never shuts up about that, does he? Spilker got dropped numerous times by Mike Mollo. Yeah. Yeah, but it's amazing that Wilder was able to knock him out, of course. He said he's down to whoop John Fury for charity. Yeah, right. That'll never happen. That'll never happen. He probably would beat John Fury, though, to be fair. But who wouldn't? I would beat John Fury. Darius is ATG at 175. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he's got one of the best resumes at 175. Carl Froch would annihilate John Fury if they were to box. I can't believe John said they should fight at Wembley Stadium. Mate, John Fury had a glass chin. And I'm talking about John Fury in his prime. Like, John Fury now, any, like, half-decent middleweight boxer would knock him out cold. I'm not even kidding. He's like an old man in his 60s. And in his prime, he was chinny. So what do you think he's going to be like now? Complete useless. He's like an old grandpa who thinks he's hard, man. Lee talks boxing. Froch is like a broken record. All he has to mention is that and his fight against Groves at Wembley Stadium. Yeah, I'm sick of hearing about Froch. I'm sick. I was sick of hearing about Froch 10 years ago. The guy's a clown, absolute degenerate as well. Just sick of hearing him. It's satisfying that literally nobody talks about Andre Fraud anymore. Yeah, because what is there to talk about? That he was the best low blower in boxing. Is that it? You know? Yeah, Dave Allen would probably beat Artur Spilka by knockout. At least now he probably would anyway. Yeah, R.I.P. Kovalev testicles and his manhood. You know, he lost his testicles to Ward, and then he sold his manhood to Canelo. Yeah, such a shame. It is what it is. Yeah, that's right. They had the same trainer also. If any fighter goes to America, you see that Tony Weeks is the ref, just refuse to fight unless he's changed. Yeah, but again, these European fighters won't do it because they're getting paid. So it's like they don't care that they're just stacking the deck against themselves essentially. Spilker's a very limited heavyweight, absolutely. But to say Wilder doesn't have real power when he puts Spilker in a stretcher is wild, if you ask me. Well, look, any big man who's over 200 pounds who lands a shot on Spilker with full power, like with all their weight behind it, anyone could do that to Spilker. It doesn't really impress me. And again, you're kind of assuming that the fight was real. I mean, how do you know it was real? It might not have been. Chris Eubank versus Colombe. Did they actually fight? No, they didn't fight, did they? If they did, I think I would favour Eubank, but only slightly. Probably by a close decision. Be an interesting fight, though. Greetings, Nordic. Yeah, good to see you here, Daniel. Hope everything is well. If you would be interested, what would be your thoughts on Wardley versus Clark? Well, I think Wardley's the stronger man. I think he's the bigger puncher. I think he's more proven. Fraser Clark is obviously, he seems like he might be the A side. He's getting more hype, but something tells me that Wardley. I've not seen an awful lot of both guys, but something tells me that Wardley's the stronger, tougher, more durable of the two, and that he might pull it off and that he might win. So at this point in time, I'm favouring Wardley, but that might change as it gets closer. You never know. And Hay was actually a great fighter in his prime, unlike Bellew, who was actually manufactured. Yeah, I've no doubt a prime Hay would have knocked out Bellew, no doubt about it, absolutely. But by the time he fought him, he was completely shot to pieces. Do you think Riddick Bowe would have had much success if he continued boxing in the late 90s after the Gallotta fights? Probably not. I think he was a punching bag by that point. I think he was punch drunk and I think he was shot. Bellew ducked the entire cruiserweight division. What was his reason for fighting Usyk? Probably just for a payday. But to be fair, I do think part of the reason Bellew fought Usyk was that he thought he could get a hometown decision. Because remember, they fought in Manchester, in the UK, and Bellew looked as if he was fighting to survive. So maybe he was hoping for a premature stoppage or a gift decision, because they were about to rob Usyk. They were giving Bellew the rounds on the scorecards, and the commentators were trying to convince people that Bellew was winning, even though Usyk was clearly winning. And yeah, it was just I think they tried to set Usyk up for a robbery there, but Usyk obviously came to win and didn't allow their plans to come to fruition. He had his own plans, so here's what it is. Don't like Nordic. We both know you would choose Frot's channel over Diet Iron Brew. Do you know what? You might be right, come to think of it. I don't know, man. I don't know. You might be right. Ben Whittaker made a fake account to slag off Triple B. Did he really? Interesting. Is that why Triple B was talking about him? Is that why? Because I didn't really follow the situation well, so I don't know much about it. You know for a fact the Ben Whittaker guy will be heavily protected. You know, I've not actually seen Ben Whittaker fight. I've not watched Ben Whittaker once. I don't know much about him. So again, you guys probably know more than me about that situation. Triple B destroyed. Yeah, Triple B can like roast anybody. Triple B just can't be outdone on the trash talk, Daniel Hardiman, eventually he'll be tested. We'll soon find out. Yeah, probably. Depends if he ever fights anyone, ever has a step up. The reason the Klitschko's didn't sign with Don King is because he pretended to play the piano. Yeah. That's what Vitali said in the documentary. He said that Don King was playing the piano and he was playing it all professionally. But then he looked behind it and he saw that it was actually playing itself. So he was like, "Yeah, this guy's a con man. I'm not dealing with him." And he walked out. That's a funny story. It's interesting. Will John Fury get iced eventually when he talks to the wrong person? I could see it happening. I could see it happening. I think Frotch is correct, but he's counting Eamon McGee's IBO. Oh, you mean Brian McGee, yeah. The shell of Glenn Johnson and the finished Robin Reed. Oh, you know what? Do you know I forgot about Robin Reed actually and Brian McGee. Yeah, early in his career, they were world champions at one point, but by the time that Frotch fought them, they were shot. Like especially Robin Reed, and that fight was fixed. By the way, I know for a fact Robin Reed took a dive for that fight. I'll tell you about that some other time. That was a fixed. If you want to know about that, go and talk to ask. Do you know the channel Making Gains? Fergal. He's an unlicensed boxer from Newcastle, I believe. Go and ask him about that. He has some information about that. Carl Froch versus Robin Reed was fixed. That was a fixed fight. But yeah, I forgot about Robin Reed. He was a world champion. So yeah, he didn't beat guys while they were world champions. He beat former world champions. He beat guys who were world champions at one point, but were completely shot by the time he fought them. I would favor John Fury to beat you. I see. Well, tell him to come see me then. I got $5,000 for him. Again, I said this before. I said this on a previous stream. I got $5,000 for anybody who can knock me out in sparring. So yeah, come see me. Come get your $5,000. Easy peasy, eh? I'm a fat midget, Yeah, when the time is right, of course, yeah. John Fury went to prison because he was getting beat in a fight by a man half his size, so he took the guy's eye out. Yeah, he was an old guy, and he apparently gouged his eyes out, I heard. Yeah, that's horrible if that's true, And it just goes to show you what a slimy degenerate John Fury is, that he would do that. to an old guy half his size. You know, he's a big bully. He's a big coward who likes picking on little guys. You saw that when he was going at Carl Frampton. You know, a guy who's literally like 5'2" or something like that. But it's funny because Carl Frampton would probably lay him out. Like I don't like Carl Frampton, but he would probably knock John Fury out like in a street fight. I'm not even kidding. Would you rather go to the cinema to drink a gallon Diet Iron Brew with cockroach mouth flavored popcorn and go watch the Human Centipede trilogy, or go on a long holiday with Frotch, Hay, and Bellew? That's a hard one. I think I'd go with the holiday with Frotch, Hay, and Bellew. I don't know, because it could be interesting. Like there could be some funny banter, I guess. Plenty of these title fights are fixed. You're absolutely right, but I don't get why a B-side fighter doesn't just try when they get in the ring, still sure they get paid. Well, no, not necessarily, because it could be in the contract. And not only that, if you're dealing with a gangster, let's say you're dealing with Daniel Kinahan, or you're dealing with Jay Prince or someone like that, one of these guys who oversees the interests of these fighters, you could literally, they could threaten your family, they could cripple you, they could offer you something in your contract that says if you win the fight, they then own a percentage of your purses for the rest of your career. And there could be like a non-disclosure agreement or something like that, you know? So not necessarily. A B-side doesn't always have the ability to just go in there and win. There's a lot more to it than that, especially when you've got gangsters and organized crime involved, you know? Yeah, Europe does have the best fighters and the most disciplined fighters, but they don't have like the money and the politics right now, but they do have the best fighters. AJ versus Ibeabuchi. That would be interesting. I think AJ could outbox Ibeabuchi, but Ibeabuchi's stamina and his durability could walk AJ down late, and he could get a late stoppage. I think if AJ was fit and prepared, he'd win on points. But if it was AJ from the Ruiz fight, or say like the Klitschko fight where he got caught and hurt, like I think that version of AJ could get stopped. So it depends on whether or not he's prepared, you know. Darius could have been undisputed greatest of all time, 175, had he not been a drunk womanizer. More defenses than anyone ever at 175, so he's arguably the best. But you never hear him mentioned. Yeah, true. Not only that, but he was also cruiserweight champion at one point, because I think he moved up and he won the WBO cruiserweight champion, or the cruiserweight belt. But I don't think he ever defended it. So he was a two-weight champion, and he's like you say, he's the longest reigning light heavyweight champion of all time in terms of defenses. He was lineal champion. He was unified champion. So why was he, again, why is he not in the Hall of Fame? Why is he not talked about as an all-time great? He really should be, as far as I'm concerned. Like if he was American, he certainly would have been. So yeah, should have been, without a doubt. If I was a B-side fighter, I'd sign the contract that says I'm not allowed to try in the fight, and then I'd go back on my word and actually fight properly when I get in the ring. Yeah, kind of like in the movie Snatch, where he's supposed to take a dive and then he just lays the guy out with the first punch. It could be like that. That would be quite funny, you know. But you saw what nearly happened in that fight. He nearly got a bullet in the brain because of it, you know. So yeah, it's not always that simple, is it? Bellew was up on the cards against Usyk, which is BS. Bellew won 2 rounds in that fight. I think I gave him 1 round. I gave him 1 round, and that was round 2. You could argue he maybe won round 3. So yeah, 2 rounds for me is the most I could give to Bellew in that fight. He lost every other round, or it was even. He shouldn't have been ahead. And I thought Usyk won the rounds on effort and effective aggression, you know? Yeah, Paulie Malignaggi was the only guy on that broadcast team who wasn't following the script. He wasn't following the script at all. It's funny how Bellew always used to talk such a big game, then get in the ring and scurry around like a rodent, trying not to get chin. Yeah, Bellew was so cowardly in the ring. Like he would talk so much in the build-up about how he's going to smash the guy up, how he's hard, how he's willing to die in order to win because he's so hard and he's such a a tough guy from the street. But then he'd get in the ring and he would literally run and hold and spoil, and it was just pathetic. Like Tony Bellew was horrible to watch, horrible fighter as far as I'm concerned, and a complete joke, complete fraud. I don't get the appeal one bit. What's your thoughts on Ben Whittaker showboating? Not seen it. No, I haven't seen the clips. I've never seen any clips of Ben Whittaker fight. And if I have, I must have forgot. Must have forgot. Yeah, Reed hurt Froch badly at the end of one of the rounds, but he quit on the stool and he took a dive. That was a fixed fight. Based on what I've heard anyway. It was apparently predetermined. Darius, another one of those fighters who, if they were American, they would be promoted as the GOAT. Yeah. That's 100% true. No doubt about it. What would you consider to be Froch's best legitimate wins? His best win, without a doubt, for me, is Butte. Butte was his best win because he was close to his prime, but I believe he had loaded gloves for that fight. Some people would say Kessler, but Kessler was shot to pieces at that point, completely shot and half blind and at the end of his career. But, a prime Kessler easily beats Froch. But, yeah, Butte was probably, without a doubt, his best win. I would have said maybe Abraham, but I think he was compromised going into that fight, and I think he just didn't perform on the night. Like he didn't come to win for whatever reason. But Lucien Butte, like just that stage of Butte's career, he was on a roll, and I think he was the favorite to win as well. So just putting the loaded glove situation aside, I think that was Froch's best win. Personally, I do. Carl Frampton would get his eyes gouged out. Yeah. Shout out to Fight Scout, by the way. God bless you. I'm a casual, so I don't really know much about Carl Frampton as a person. I've never liked Carl Frampton. He just comes across as a prick to me. And I don't know, man. It's something about him. I'm not going to go into details. He just comes across as a complete bellend, and it's mostly, a lot of it's to do with his commentary. He's so biased. And he just tells absolute lies during the broadcast. It just annoys me. It really does. Carl Frampton's a nice fella. Met him, had a chat, and took a picture with him. Down to earth man. Yeah, a lot of people seem to like him. I've never liked him. Never liked him one bit. I'm hoping John Fury brings up the loaded gloves to Froch, and see if Froch goes silent. Oh yeah, bring that up, and Froch will disappear. He'll never even look at John Fury again, or even say his name, if he brings that up. So hopefully he does, because it's interesting, that one. I think the Mafia was involved with the Liston and Ali fight when Liston took a dive. Yeah, Liston was heavily in debt with the mob, and he just quit on his stool for no reason in that first fight, and then took an obvious dive in the rematch. Obvious dive. Some of his opinions are dodgy. Be wary of some of the things that comes out of that guy's mouth. I think because I'm 18, I underthink a lot. That's something I've come to terms with. Thanks for clearing up the A-side tactics for me, good sir. Yeah, no problem, man. I'm glad to educate you. You've come to a very wise and knowledgeable channel. This is all you need. This channel is all you need for knowledge and wisdom. I'm just messing around, obviously. How do you think a Prime Hay would have done in the World Boxing Super Series? Well, I don't think he would have won it, because I think Murat Gassiev had the perfect style to beat David Hay. He would have done exactly what Fragamini tried to do to Hay, but he would have taken him out late, in my opinion. David Hay hated like short, stocky pressure fighters. He couldn't handle them. Look at his fight with Mormek, and look at his fight with Lolenga Mock, and his fight with Fragamini. It's a wonder he was able to win those fights. Like, if David Hay wasn't such a strong, big puncher, he would have been knocked out in all of those fights, because he was taking a beating in all of those fights. But, his size and his power got him the win. But I think someone like Gassiev or Briadis, like with that short, stocky, pressure fighting style, I think they would have walked him down and stopped him. I think he would have lost to Usyk. Maybe he could have beaten Kudryashov. I think he would have knocked him out. And he'd have probably knocked out Dorticos as well. But I don't think he would have beaten the top European guys. I think they would have won. Mayweather versus Winky Wright. Winky Wright schools him. absolutely schools him and wins easily on points in a real fight. From the looks of the current times in boxing, fixed fights seem to occur more frequently than ever. The establishment fighters are at an all-time high. Yeah, the establishment fighters, as soon as one of these guys signs to fight them, you know they're not coming to win. You know that they've sold out, essentially. That's that's what we're seeing like with Canelo. When someone signs to fight Canelo, in most cases, you know they're going to carry him and they're not going to come to win. It is what it is. Yeah, he did. Bellew versus Cleverly, the second fight at cruiserweight, he really struggled. A one-handed Cleverly who had an injured hand, and he still won a lot of rounds against Bellew and made it a split decision in Bellew's hometown. Very close fight. I think Whitaker won't be showboating when someone with a pulse is in front of him. Yeah. What I will say is, fighters who showboat against journeymen, like low-level journeymen, they kind of rub me up the wrong way, if truth be told. Pascal is a pretty good win for Froch, although I think that fight could have gone either way. Yeah, that was a very close fight. I think what I remember from that fight, I've not watched it in years, but I think Pascal won like the first 5 rounds, and then he got tired midway, and Froch took over. So I think I might have had it 7-5 for Froch. I think he did just enough to win, but it was very close. It could have gone either way. And the scorecards were way too wide in that fight. That fight was in Nottingham. And yeah, that was when Froch won the title, the vacant title at super middleweight. I do think that Pascal was a little bit drained. I don't think he would have beaten Froch. I think he might have beaten Froch, sorry, if the fight was at light heavyweight. I think he would have won it. Would you rather go on a full 12-month intensive boot camp in rural Siberia area with Big John Fury as the drill sergeant, or go on Love Island with Tommy Fury, Carl Froch, his wife, and the Paul brothers? Do you know what? The Paul brothers sealed the deal for me. I'll take the first one. I'm not sitting about listening to Paul Smith and his brothers, the autism brothers, talking about Akid. I'm not sitting listening to that for hours on end and listen them talk about Germany and all that. Nah, I'll go on the boot camp with John Fury because that way I can train and take my mind off it. So that won't be so bad. I'm kind of getting used to that anyway. I've, I've been doing like circuit training in the gym, so I'm getting used to like intense boot camp style training. So that wouldn't actually be so bad for me now. Light heavyweight Bellew versus Froch at 175. Froch on points because I think Bellew would probably just like tire out midway, and Froch would outwork him and win on points. I think Bellew would have some success early on. Like he might outbox Froch a little bit, but because he was bigger and he had a lot more power. But I think Froch would eventually just outwork him, win on points. Frampton is a cook, yeah, but he's nice, yeah, he is a cook, no doubt about it. Say that to his face, please. Well, in order to say that to his face, you'd have to bend over. You'd have to like squat and sit down to say that to Carl Frampton's face. Triple B got blocked on Twitter by Joseph Parker for saying he was smashing Paris and cooking Tyson. Well, I can't imagine why he got blocked then. I can't imagine why you'd block him, for saying something like that. Carl Frampton outworks John Fury in a boxing match, maybe even TKOs him against the ropes, yeah. I mean, you'd need to get him a stepladder first, but yeah, you could still win it. John Fury is a pig. He would be gassed after 30 seconds in a boxing match. Yeah, he would. Probably even less. Probably 10 seconds he'd gas out in. And my son Tyson is the king, and I'll show that diva I'm the emperor. John's face, I've sold out 80,000 seats at Wembley before, and I'll do it again. Carl Froch's face, boys Nelson. Yeah. Favorite fighter in British boxing? What, right now? I don't know, man. Like British boxing's a sad state at the moment, isn't it? I still quite like Josh Warrington. I'd still find him very entertaining. So I'd say probably him. I would have said Josh Taylor, but I think he's finished. So I'll say Josh Warrington because he's still got a few fights left in him, I think. What's this about the YTBC being finished? I was talking about this earlier. I'm just basically I was bringing up how it seems to me like the YTBC isn't really a community anymore. It's like you've got the independent content creators who have basically been buried by the algorithm, and then you've got the corporate sellout channels, who are tethered to some sort of corporation or one of these networks. That's just what it seems like to me. YouTube, like boxing discussions on YouTube, it's all like verified corporate affiliated channels now that get pushed. So there doesn't seem to be like much collaboration between just regular independent channels like us. There doesn't really seem to be any content. Like I don't search through YouTube nowadays like I used to and see content every single day that I want to watch. There doesn't seem to really be anything there. Again, maybe I'm just remembering something that never existed, but I seem to remember YouTube used to have more of a like booming boxing community and an independent one that it doesn't really have anymore. Usyk versus Baturbiev. Yeah, but like, what was that? I was gonna say that. I just said that. I remember somebody said that reminded me for some reason. There was a comment about Bellew fighting Baturbiev at 175, and I'm trying to remember what the comment was. It was something really funny. I can't remember, but yeah, Usyk versus Baturbiev. That they fought in the amateurs. All right, what was I going to say? Where was I? Winky Wright and Diego Corrales look very. Yeah, they do. They do look very similar. Jake and Logan. Yeah, absolute clowns, man. After the Pascal fight, Froch had a very bad run, and he got beat up by Jermaine Taylor, beat by Andre Durrell, and beat up by Kessler. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the Jermaine Taylor fight, he got absolutely schooled in that fight, dropped, and he basically won the fight by just outlasting Taylor. Taylor ran out of gas. Froch, who was just bigger and fitter, managed to get a stoppage with like 12 seconds left on the clock. So he got very, very lucky there. He lost clearly to Andre Durrell, and he lost clearly by Kessler. So really, really, Froch could have lost by like he could have easily lost his first title defense. Like his run as champion was actually very weak, you know. Yeah, Froch's stamina was very good. He was fantastically fit. Like he could throw punches for 12 rounds. He had very good stamina. Who do you think would win between Tyson and Tua? Do you know, I give Tua a very, very good chance of knocking out Tyson. Like, he was so much stronger, and he hit very, very hard. But I think Tyson's speed and his, like, explosiveness would get there first. So, I think it would be a knockout either way, but I think I'd favor Tyson slightly. Like, if it was Tyson later on in his career, I'd favor Tua. But I give both of them a very good chance. He then beat Abraham, but got beat up by Glenn Johnson and Ward straight after. Yeah, but yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. I thought Glenn Johnson fight was a draw. I think I had that fight 6 rounds each. I gave it a draw personally. Ward won every single round against Froch. It wasn't even competitive. Abraham, I think I had that 9-3, 8-4 for Froch, and that's because Abraham just stood there and did nothing for 12 rounds. But whenever Abraham did something, he actually had success. He actually landed quite a lot of shots in that fight. It's just that he barely threw anything. But when he would throw something, he would land, and he almost dropped Froch in the last round. So yeah, that was a bizarre fight. That one, it was very strange. But yeah, Glenn Johnson fight I thought was a draw, and the Ward fight he lost very, very clearly. Wasn't even competitive. Today, talking about boxing with Smigger 24 hours a day is an exciting proposition. Yeah, you know what? Thinking about it, it could give me a good laugh, Smigger is one of the only 168 contenders that Froch could have beaten legit. Yeah, could you imagine Froch versus Smigger? That would have been an interesting build-up, to be fair. Very interesting build-up. Would I be too much of a casual to say my favourite British boxer to watch is AJ? Well, no, that's your opinion. That's your personal opinion. If he's your favourite, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. Let's hope Josh beats the broccoli head Cook in the rematch. Yeah, do you know what? He might beat him, but it'll be interesting though, because Josh Warrington, I just don't trust him. Like Josh Warrington was winning every second of that fight, and then like an absolute moron, he just stood right in front of Lee and let himself get knocked out. Well, he didn't get knocked out; he got stopped, but he shouldn't have been getting hit at all. Like Josh Warrington should have pulled away with the victory, stayed behind the high guard, forced Lee out of his comfort zone, forced him to lead, and he maybe could have won, but he fought like a clown, you know. Shout out to Outlaw Pugilist. Good to see you here, brother. God bless you, man. Yeah, I'm good. I'm all good. Aggressive AJ, not gun. Yeah, yeah. He was more entertaining then. The algorithm killing us. These big corporations are taking over what we started. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The algorithm is pushing out regular independent content creators and favoring corporations and corporate affiliated channels that sold out for the establishment, you know. Oh yeah, pound the like button. Pound that like button. Cheers. God bless you. I had the second Kessler Froch fight a draw. Yeah, that fight was very close. I think I had it 7-5 Froch, the second fight. But it was very, very close. Could have gone either way. But the Glenn Johnson fight, I had a draw. No, you remember it correctly. YTBC used to be a lot less plastic. Yeah, yeah, that's how I remember it. It was mostly just regular people with channels, like doing their own thing and giving their own opinion. It wasn't like people trying to sell out and make money and corporations taking over. Like it was so different back then, you know. What's your thoughts on bare knuckle boxing? Very entertaining, if you ask me. I love it. I love watching bare knuckle boxing. I've watched a lot of it on YouTube, and it's very entertaining. And a lot of the time, it's more entertaining than glove boxing. Like I've actually got a soft spot for bare knuckle boxing. I know I don't really cover it on here. I don't really talk about it much, but I do watch it. I watch it from time to time, and it is very entertaining. Yeah, yeah, the scorecards were a disgrace in that fight. Adelaide Bird had it 10 rounds to 2 for Froch. You cannot tell me that Froch won 10 rounds in that fight. Not even close. Not even close. Kessler was literally smacking him with like big left hooks, big overhand rights. There was consecutive rounds where Kessler like put a beating on Froch in that second fight. But Adelaide Bird was giving the rounds to Froch. That was like Canelo Triple G in terms of how it was scored. It made no sense, you know. Pick Tyson on points. Yeah, Tyson could win it. I think his like speed and his explosive power could lead to that, you know. But I definitely think Tua had a puncher's chance, you know. Yeah, like most Froch fights. How quickly would Prime Lewis KO Prime AJ? I say inside 5 rounds. I would go with Lewis round 5. I would. AJ versus Frank Bruno. I think AJ's a little bit. He's a little bit more athletic than Bruno, a little bit quicker. I think Bruno was very, very physically strong though, and Bruno had decent boxing skill too. Like Bruno was very, very good at sort of surviving and spoiling for a while, but again, Bruno was one of these guys who, when he would get hit, he would freeze up, and he had terrible stamina too. So I think I would favor AJ, but I think it would be late. I think Bruno would maybe win some of the early rounds, but AJ's strength and his power would catch up to him, and he would stop him late. I think. Yeah, I would favor AJ. Smigger beats Froch unless the fight's in Germany. Yeah, if it's in Germany, he couldn't get the decision. Does Joshua carry Ngannou the same way Fury did? I couldn't tell you that. I've no idea. I've absolutely no idea. Well, like all I can see in that fight, either AJ goes in there, sets about him, and stops him in the first round, or he just carries him and stops him whenever he wants to. Either way, it's an absolute mismatch. Yeah, Warrington is desperate to prove he's tough. He is. I don't know what that's all about. All he has to do is box, keep his high guard and box, and he wins. He would be undefeated if he just did that his whole career. The guys that have beaten Josh Warrington had no business beating him, in my opinion. But again, that's just my opinion. It is what it is. Thoughts on AJ as a person? I'm not a fan. I think he's a liberal. I think he's a sellout, and I think he's a bit of a cock, if truth be told. I'm not a fan of him. Good fighter, but I'm not a fan of him as a person. How about the best three fighters in Britain currently? I think Joe Cordina is one of the better fighters in Britain right now. He's got to be up there. Obviously, Fury's still got to be up there, and based on skill, Warrington's still got to be up there. I think. Yeah, Shaggy is the profile. Yeah, baked Shaggy. What's the Wade concept? I don't know what that is. Maybe that's gone right over my head. Maybe I do. Have you ever watched the documentary Knuckle? Never watched it, but I'm assuming I'm assuming it's about bare knuckle boxing, like we were talking about earlier. I've never watched it. No. Yeah, I don't know what that is. The Wade concept. Froch was more hurt than Kessler ever was. People need to shut up about Froch's chin and put some respect on Kessler's chin. Yeah, Kessler had a great chin. Kessler was only dropped one time in his career, and that was when he fought Alan Green, who obviously Alan Green was a big puncher, but Kessler was shot at that point, completely shot. But that was the only time he was ever down. Kessler had a way better chin than Froch did. See if you look at the first Kessler-Froch fight and the second one, when Froch would hit Kessler, it had nearly no effect at all. He barely even flinched, barely even blinked when he was hit. But you look at when Froch was hit, Froch was hurt badly every time he got hit clean. And he was nearly dropped in the last round too, at the first fight. Kessler had the better chin by far. Bruno had an elite jab, but his stamina was terrible and he lacked confidence. Yeah, Bruno did have good boxing fundamentals, but he was just not an athlete. He was a bodybuilder. You know, he had that bodybuilder physique, like we were talking about earlier. Frampton versus Tupac. Do you mean Shakur Stevenson? I don't know, man. Maybe Shakur on points in a close fight. I think Mike Tyson would intimidate AJ, and I think he'd stop him in 3. I think he would get inside, hit him to the body, hit him by hooks with hooks and uppercuts. I think AJ would mentally capitulate. I think he'd get stopped early. If it was Tyson for the later stage of his career, like Tyson from the 90s or early 2000s, AJ knocks him out late. But prime Tyson from like the late 80s stops AJ early, I think. Yo, shout out to Kenwell. Good to see you here, brother. God bless you. Wade Concept is a door. I don't even know who that is. I'm sure some of you guys will tell me. I've no idea who he is, though. Hard to say because Taylor and Warrington should be up there, but they keep putting in bad performances. Yeah, Taylor and Warrington, to me, are the 2 best fighters in Britain, technically. But both of them have ruined their careers with stupid decisions and not coming to win, essentially. Coming to not even fight to the best of their ability, you know? Yeah. Sonny Edwards versus Vic Darchinyan. Vic Darchinyan by stoppage. Stops him late, prime for prime, I think. Josh Taylor sold out, and he is also past his prime now. He should just retire before he ruins his legacy any more than he already has. Yeah. Josh Taylor had a very, very good resume for the few amount of fights he had, but he just pissed it all away. He didn't build on it at all. He became undisputed, and then that was it. He just cashed out essentially. So, yeah, it's a disappointing end to his career as far as I'm concerned. But he had a good career while it lasted. How would you rate Hatton with current 140 and 147 fighters? Also, why did he keep that WBU belt? Well, I'll tell you exactly why he kept the WBU belt. Because he could defend the belt without having to fight a mandatory. Because one thing about the WBU is they didn't have mandatory challengers. You could basically fight anybody to defend that belt. So he was a world champion and he was defending his title at home without fighting anybody of note. He was fighting mostly journeymen and domestic level guys. So that was why he held that belt for so long, you know. To answer your question, though, I think against the current 140 guys, he'd beat some of them. But, you know, if he were to fight like Josh Taylor prime for prime, I think he'd get stopped. I do. But I would pick him to beat like, let's say if we would fight guys like Jose Pedraza or someone like that, or Tank Davis and whatnot. I think he beats those guys. But he could probably beat Keith Thurman. Maybe he could get him to the body, but against like the elite, I don't think he would win. Who's the new hype job? Come on, Zazak. I don't think Shakur has a real fight his whole career. No, me neither. I don't think he has either. Taylor versus Ben. You mean Taylor versus Conor Benn? I think Conor Benn knocks him out if they fight now. Taylor a couple years ago would school him, but if he fights now, Taylor gets stopped. I think. Do you know? I think Mike Tyson would have a puncher's chance against Tyson Fury. He could stop him early, but I think Tyson Fury would have the defensive instincts and the recovery or the quick recovery to basically survive an early scare and maybe wear Mike Tyson down and stop him late. So I'd favour Tyson Fury, but he would have to really survive an early onslaught to win it, I think. Prime Adamek versus Prime Briadis. Briadis on points, but Adamek gives him some problems, I think. Come on, Serbia, yeah. The Wade Concept is an American YouTuber that covers influencer boxing, MMA, and boxing. You wouldn't be interested, yeah, probably not. So he talks about Jake Paul and all them other clowns. Yeah, no thanks. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. Hatton would beat every 140-pound champion today, but he was always too small for 147. Yeah, I think at 147 he'd be outmuscled and outlasted. But you give him a good chance at 140 against some of them, but against the elites of that division, I don't think he would win. Yard versus Buatsi. I would go with Yard because I just think he's more proven, probably on points. But we'll see how Buatsi develops. He might develop into a better fighter, but right now I favour Yard. I think he wins it. Being the WBU champion is like being the Cage Warriors champion in MMA. Still much worse than that. Yeah, it doesn't mean a whole lot. Like it's a belt, it's a title, but it doesn't. It's a title of sorts, but it doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. It's not like winning one of the major titles. Like the major titles are more prestigious. Harley Benn versus Campbell Hatton. Probably Harley Benn. Like Campbell Hatton is that bad. When do you think would have been the absolute perfect time for Hatton versus Witter to take place? During Hatton's WBU run when they were both coming up or later on in their careers? I would say the best time for it to have happened would have been 2005, 2007, because that was round about the peak of Ricky's like popularity. And, Junior Witter was one of the top contenders in the division at that point. So, yeah, I'd say 2005 is when that should have happened. It would have made a lot more sense. It's a shame it never happened. I heard about this new UK hype job, light heavyweight prospect Ben Whittaker. Oh yeah, we were talking about him earlier. Who has a similar style to Prince Nazim Hamed and Emmanuel August. No, I've never actually watched him. I was talking about this earlier. I've never watched Ben Whittaker, but I've heard people talk about him. So I don't know much about the guy, unfortunately. Not many people agree with me, but I believe if there was a neutral ref in Hatton Mayweather, Hatton would have won. Yeah, I agree. I think he would have won. I agree because the referee protected Floyd all night and he was crying to the referee and complaining. And eventually Ricky Hatton just got frustrated and started lunging forward and got himself knocked out. But if he was allowed to fight inside and fight his usual style, he would have won, in my opinion. Hatton knocks Davis out in round 1. Yeah, I think he'd knock him out. Tank versus Ben. Probably Tank. Yeah, probably. Ben would just walk onto his shots, Conor Benn is awful. Barely beat Peter Dobson, whoever that is. Yeah, I've not seen that fight, but from what I've heard, it was garbage. From what I've heard, like Ben didn't even look very good. That new DC game is total garbage, mate. Obviously, I've not played it. Obviously, I'm not going to play it. But I did watch Synthetic Man's review of that game. I don't know if you've seen it, Reverse Lee, but check out Synthetic Man's review for that game. It's actually quite funny. Like he showed like highlights from his stream, It's that game is literally it's just all cutscenes. It's not even a game. Like, you don't do anything in it. It's just cutscenes. And it's like it's filled with, like, pedophilic shit. It was written by Sweet Baby Inc. Surprise, surprise. Like, man, that was disgusting, that game. It's horrible. Like, they turned Poison Ivy into Greta Thunberg. Like, they literally I'm not even kidding, they made Poison Ivy into Greta Thunberg. That tells you everything you need to know. That and Hatton would be all wrong for Catterall, yeah. Catterall would probably survive it though by just like clinching and running and spoiling, you know. How do you think Arturo Gatti would do against someone like Maidana? I think Maidana stops him. Gatti would have his success early on, like, but he would tough it out. But I think eventually Maidana's size, strength, power would break him down and stop him. So yeah, I think he would. Holyfield versus Povetkin in their primes. Povetkin on points. I don't think he stopped Holyfield, but I think he's a better boxer. I think he wins on points. My nan could beat Harley Ben, yeah. Sue Knight versus Otto Wallen. I don't know. Yeah, Whitaker's eyes are too close together. He's like Wallace. That's what Triple B was saying, apparently. Thoughts on the new GTA game? I'm never gonna play it. Never gonna play it. Absolutely. It'll just be a open world LGBT simulator. And yeah, I've got no time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Synthetic Man brutalized that game. Glad we watched the same people. I just watch his channel. Yeah, I don't always agree with him, but I do watch his videos. I find them entertaining. And yeah, he did a funny review for that game. It was just I laughed watching him try to play it on stream and just like looking like he wanted to slit his wrist. Like, it was funny, man. It's funny because there's barely any gameplay. It's just all cutscenes. And it's just the characters talking shit, and it's got like tranny flags. It's got Greta Thunberg, and then it's got Harley Quinn saying she's like attracted to Greta Thunberg. It's like, who? Where do I even start with that? I don't even know. I can't even make fun of that. Like, there's nothing to go on. It's so like degenerate and so disgusting that it just speaks for itself. Even the normies are angry about it. Like, even the normies are like, this is too much now. We can't handle this. You know, it's gone too far for even them, you know? It is what it is. Hatton was winning the Floyd fight before losing his head with the BS point deduction. Hatton foot speed gave Floyd big problems. Yeah, and Floyd, you know, Hatton was physically stronger on the inside than Floyd, and he was hurting him to the body, and Floyd didn't like it, you know? So he had his bodyguard referee, Joe Cortez, step in and save him. I enjoyed Synthetic Man's review for Spider-Man 2. His irritated expression in the gameplay is hilarious, yeah. I mean, I don't know how he can actually, like, sit and play those games, though. Like, I could never bring myself to even play them. I honestly couldn't. How do you think the fight between Beterbiev versus Bivol goes down? I think if Bivol doesn't hurt Beterbiev in 4 rounds, he's getting finished in the 8th round. It will be worse beating than Callum Smith. Yeah, I think it could be similar to the what do you call it? The Vosdik fight. I think Bivol will have his moments. He will be able to outbox Beterbiev here and there. But eventually, Beterbiev's strength, his persistence, his power, and his just sheer pressure that he applies, as well as his underrated defense and his underrated foot speed, will probably get the better of Bivol. So I favor him to win. But if the fight happens in, say, like, let's say it gets delayed and it happens in a year's time, the longer it takes to get made, the more it favors Bivol because he's younger. You know, he's got the younger legs. He's a little bit fitter. You know, I think the longer the fight takes to make, the more chance I give Bivol to win. You know, probably on points. But I do think Beterbiev can break him down and stop him late. But if Bivol can kind of stay at long range, stand his ground when he needs to, maybe he can have some success and maybe he can win on points. I don't know. It's a hard fight, man. But yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. But that's how I like the fight. That's why I like the fight. because it's so difficult to call. You know, where was I? Yeah, Usyk Holyfield. I think Usyk schools Holyfield and wins on points. Again, I don't think he stops him, but wins on points. The entire trailer for GTA 6 was just obese black women twerking. Well, I mean, Sonny Edwards will probably buy it then. He'll enjoy it. But yeah, that sums up the state of modern gaming, doesn't it? Sweet Baby Inc. Look up who Sweet Baby Inc. is, and you'll know what I'm on about. Look up Black Rock and Sweet Baby Inc. That'll tell you everything you need to know about modern gaming. I'm not interested in a woman and her BF being the main characters in a GTA game. Yeah, the last GTA game that was great in my opinion was San Andreas and Vice City before that. Ever since then, there's been no good GTA, in my opinion. Have you played Tekken 8? No. I played one of the old Tekkens as a kid on PS1, but I've not played Tekken 8. The Walking Dead game, which one is that? I know there's been a few Walking Dead games. I played one of them with my cousin. I think it was the Telltale one. I wasn't a big fan of it, but I've heard there's been a few of them games like on that series. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the show or anything, so I probably wouldn't be into it. Joe Cortez, Kenny Bayless, Tony Weeks, and Lawrence Cole are the worst referees ever. Yeah, that sounds about right. Howard Foster too. Yeah, Cortez won the Hatton fight, not Floyd. Always said had there been a different ref, Hatton wins that fight on the inside. Yeah, I agree. Hatton would win that fight with a fair ref. Ian John Lewis too. Yeah, he likes stopping fighters early. That's been his thing. Yeah, he got demoted for the Taylor Catterall fight. Yeah, which oddly enough, that was actually a very good scorecard. He scored that fight absolutely right. He had the same scorecard. No, sorry, I had the same scorecard as Victor Loughlin, but I think Ian John Lewis had the right guy winning. No, I'm never playing GTA 6. No chance. I'll never play it. I'll never buy it. I'll never play it. Would you say Crawford and Spence are one of the few active African American boxers you have time for? Well, I like watching Spence's fights. They're not too bad. Crawford, I find kind of boring personally because I think a lot of his fights are setups. But they're both good fighters, no doubt about it. The Telltale game has a good story, but it's more like a TV series than a game. You hardly do anything. Yeah, you just kind of react to the prompts on screen, don't you? It's one of them. It's like an interactive movie. It's not really much of a game. Not the type of games that I like anyway. I never liked GTA 4. I thought it was shit, personally. I thought it was garbage. GTA 5, I actually like a little bit more than GTA 4, but I wasn't a big fan of it. It was kind of like just a big bloated Ubisoft game. Never liked it. But I liked the first Red Dead Redemption, and I liked the older GTA games like GTA 3, San Andreas, and Vice City. Gameplay might be fine, but the story will be leftist woke garbage. To be honest, I don't think the gameplay will be good either because Rockstar Games has never been good at making gameplay. That's one thing that people don't seem to understand. Rockstar, like they're very good at technicalities. They're good at making open worlds and well detailed maps, but they've never been very good at level design. They've never been very good at controls. They've never been good at like combat, shooting mechanics. They've never been good at like platforming. Like there's nothing in Rockstar games from a gameplay perspective that's very complex. There's not much depth to their gameplay. So I don't think the gameplay will be good. I think it'll just be the same as Red Dead Redemption 2, which was absolute garbage, terrible gameplay. It just played like absolute crap. It ran on a garbage engine, like an outdated engine that never worked. And yeah, again, it was just crap as far as I'm concerned. So I don't think the gameplay will be good. I mean, again, the good example of that will be Red Dead Redemption 2. Even ignoring the story, that game was just garbage. It sucked. Like the gameplay was terrible. It was so slow, so janky. It was so buggy. It was broken. It was just a broken game. So I don't think the gameplay in GTA 6 will be any better. I think it will be even worse because again, it's they're still using an extremely outdated engine, and their games just don't function as far as I'm concerned. Like Rockstar's never been a good developer. Again, they're very good at making pretty looking maps and stuff like that, but they're not good at gameplay. You know. Ian John Lewis, yeah, that was a disgrace. I think he actually apologized. Ian John Lewis apologized for that right after because he kind of panicked. That was a terrible stoppage. And then Enzo destroyed him in the rematch, you know? Yeah, Jaron Ennis is just fighting guys half his size. He needs to actually fight someone. Crawford versus Spence. So I think it was real, but I think Spence was shot, if truth be told. I think he was chinny and brain damaged and completely shot. Favorite American fighters ever? It's got to be Butterbean, obviously. Like, yeah, Butterbean, my favorite American fighter. Could sit and watch his fights all day. Nah, but in all seriousness, that there are American fighters I like. Like I did like Sean Porter. You know, I thought he was pretty good. I used to like Timothy Bradley before he became a commentator. Then I couldn't stand him. You know. And there's a lot of like American fighters from the past who are great to watch, like Larry Holmes and George Foreman. Guys like that are great to watch, you know. So there's a lot I like. I don't know if I really have a favorite. Yeah, that stoppage was awful. No, I never liked GTA 5. Never liked it. I thought GTA 5 was such a bloated game and it was just so like mediocre. It was like aggressively mediocre, if you know what I mean. Yeah, he did. He jumped in and apologized. Watch Dogs, I've never played it. No, never played it. No, it didn't, mate. Red Dead Redemption 2 had one of the worst stories I have ever seen in a game. I talked about this on my other channel. Like, the story of that game didn't make any sense. It literally didn't make any sense. It was so contrived. The characters were all awful. Like, that game is set in like 19. I think it's set in like 1908 or something like that. It's set in like the early 1900s, maybe even before. And yet the characters in it are all like modern day liberal stereotypes. You've got like one of the missions has you like escorting it has you like driving a wagon filled with feminists to a votes for women rally and stuff like that. You know, there's missions where you have to help young lovers reconcile. And then there's other missions where you have to rob a bank and like murder innocent people and all that. Look, that game made absolutely no sense. It was just contrived nonsense. The characters were all complete idiots. Nothing they did made any sense. Like you're supposed to be like a gang of like outlaws living in the Wild West, trying to make it outside of civilization. Yet your camp is literally right next to a town that's got a bank and everything. And the people who are living in that town are like the people who are living in that town are literally more wealthy than the outlaws living in a camp in the wilderness. Like if these guys were to just get a job, they'd literally make more money and have a much easier existence. It's just so stupid, man. Like it didn't make any sense. You rob a train, and then all of a sudden, some like bullshit happens, and then you lose all the money. And then you rob a bank, you lose all the money because the gang is led by an idiot who they follow the idiot like Dutch Vandalen, even though the guy's like the character is completely retarded. Nothing he says or does the entire game makes any sense whatsoever. But the characters in the game blindly follow him and do whatever he says. Every single other cutscene in the game is the characters talking about, oh, Dutch is crazy. He's losing his mind. He's going to get us all killed. But then they continue to follow him and they continue to do what he says. And they continue to make an absolute arse of themselves. And then you move from camp to camp, murder like scores of innocent people for no reason, right? You rob trains, you rob banks, and then you give up the money somehow. Mate, that game was so contrived. Its story was all over the place, right? Its difficulty was all over the place. Like it didn't gradually increase in difficulty. One mission would be like insultingly easy, Then the next mission would be like the hardest thing ever. You would die immediately. Everything in the game was so scripted. So where you're in the middle of a mission and you're following somebody, right? You decide, I'm going to turn left and I'm going to walk 2 seconds to the left. Mission failed. You've got to start again. It was one of them. Like, you pull out your gun in the middle of a robbery or something. Mission failed. You accidentally bump into somebody in the street and about 15 people start flipping gunning you to death. Like, that the AI was pure broken. The the horses that you ride around on were completely retarded. They would gas out after like 2 seconds. They would crash into a wall. You would get a bounty for no reason. Like, you'd walk into a town that you've never been to before, and you would have a bounty, and the police would start shooting you on sight. Like, that game was so broken. The story was all over the place. The difficulty was all over the place. The controls were horrible. The combat was terrible. The open world had nothing in it. There was no reason to do anything in the open world. It was like an Ubisoft game. Everything felt just like busy work. Man, that game sucked. It was one of the worst games I have ever played. And I cannot believe that so many people say, like literally, people say that's the greatest game of all time. It's the greatest game ever made. And I think to myself, to the people who say this, have you ever actually played a game before? Like, if you've ever played a cover-based third-person shooter, let's say you've ever played like Gears of War or something like that, how could you possibly think Red Dead Redemption had good shooting mechanics? If you've ever played an open world sandbox game, one that has like side missions and RPG elements, like let's say you've played an Elder Scrolls game or something like that, right? Or one of these Ubisoft games, how could you play one of them and then tell me that Red Dead Redemption 2 was a good RPG? It doesn't make any sense. That game was terrible. It was one of the worst games I've ever seen. Objectively bad. Like, man, I can't believe people like that game. I can't believe it. Honestly, it just tells me most people are normies. That's what it tells me. It really does. I know. Sorry about that tangent there. I do apologize, but that game, I'm so overjoyed to have it off my hands now. Did you ever play LA Noire? One of my favorite games. Do you know I've got that game, but I still haven't played it. I keep meaning to review it. You are one of the only two people to actually call out Rockstar's piss poor game design. Exactly. Rockstar has never been able to make like quality controls in a game ever. They've never been able to make like missions that are consistent in their difficulty level or their how time consuming they are. And everything in their games is so forced. Like, there's no replay value, there's no complexity or depth to any of the missions. It's like an interactive movie. And if you don't follow the script exactly, you fail the mission immediately. There's no choice. There's no worthwhile RPG elements. Like, their games are so poor. They're such a terrible developer, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, exactly. Rockstar's prime days was back in the PS2 era because they actually because it was simple. What they were doing back then was they were making basically random open world simulation games. They weren't tech demos essentially, but their modern games are tech demos that are so boring. I don't like Franklin in GTA 5. He's literally the most generic stereotype of a black guy from the hood I've ever seen. Exactly. Like Franklin in that character, he's such a stereotypical character. He is. They're literally like, what are all the tropes and stereotypes you could attribute to a black guy living in the ghetto in America? Well, that's him. He's every single one of them. And there's no like complexity to the character at all. Like, you couldn't really do a character study for Franklin, could you? Because he's every single generic like ghetto type character. Whereas CJ actually had an interesting an interesting backstory and several interesting character arcs. He was a more interesting character. I think the writing behind him was a lot better. Yeah, everyone just praises and dick sucks Rockstar. And if you try criticizing them, you get fucking roasted for it. Like, try criticizing Rockstar and just look at how people react to it. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Ricky gave Crawford a really tough fight. He did. I find that EA Sports games don't have very good gameplay. Always said they are overrated. Yeah, the only ones I've got a lot of experience with are the Fight Night games, and I liked some of them. I've not played many more of them. EA Sports games. EA Sports to the game. Remember that? Their intro. Never forget the first round in Macronelli McPhilbin, fight ending 47 seconds early. Yeah, remember that? He caught him with a left hook. Like Enzo's legs literally turned to jelly, and then and then the bell went. Like Frank Warren must have rung the bell or something. That was funny. Yeah, that was a crazy fight. Yeah, I was at one of Shane McPhilbin's fights. It was a fight before then. He fought a guy called Simon Clover, and yeah, Lee Wood was on the undercard making his pro debut. Red Dead Redemption 2 was set in 1899. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it was the first game I was thinking of that was set in 1911. Yeah, the first one was set in 1911, I think, if I remember rightly, because that's years later. And yeah, 1899, the first one. But you've got like you walk into a bar. You walk into a bar in that game, and there's like a black guy in a suit serving in the bar, literally in it's supposed to be Texas in 1899. You've got feminists holding feminist rallies. You've got like cowboys riding around with Indians and fighting against the American government. Like that game was so ridiculous. It made no sense. One of the dumbest games I've ever played. Have you played Ghost of Tsushima? It was my personal favorite game on PS4. Robbed by Last of Us 2. Never played it. I think that game was developed by Sucker Punch, who made the Sly games. I don't know if it's the same people, but it's the same brand, like the same company. Seems like the Rainbow Gang with gashes between their legs had a say about what that game would be like. Yeah, they did. It was Sweet Baby Inc. that wrote the script. They write the script for all these modern games, which is why I don't play them. Mostly. Dutch Van der Linde was a twat. Yeah, I couldn't stand Dutch Van der Linde. And not only that, Dutch Van der Linde was the villain of the first game. So you know that he's the bad guy. You know he's going to turn out to be a bad guy because the first game is set before the second game. The second game's a prequel. So obviously, Dutch Van der Linde is the bad guy and he's going to betray the gang. So why does the game not give you an opportunity to do anything that would hinder him? Like, you're literally his errand boy the entire game. You didn't like Arthur Morgan. No, I couldn't stand Arthur Morgan. One of the worst characters I've ever come across in a game. Hated the character. Couldn't stand him. Red Dead Redemption 2 had violent criminals who judged people morally for being too traditional and right-wing. Yeah, they did, yeah. You're literally a gang of cowboys, a gang of outlaws, and you're talking about civil rights and feminism and the woman's right to vote. I'm like, this is the most contrived bullshit I have ever come across in a game. I couldn't believe it. I started skipping cutscenes, and I'm like, there's literally there's a moment in the game. I know I've gone on a massive tangent here. There's a moment in that game where you meet like this tribe of Indians, right? And one of them is like a total sociopath who's going around like murdering soldiers. I think they're supposed to be like Confederate soldiers, right? They're American soldiers, right? And he's going around murdering them, like going into their camps, raiding them, like mercilessly murdering these soldiers. And the game forces you to join him and go on a march to wipe out an American military camp, right? And then he gets shot. Like the Indian guy gets shot during the mission. And then there's a cutscene, and this cutscene goes on for ages, and the guy's dying, and they bring him back, and they bring him back to his dad, like in the like tent or whatever where they live. And he's like, it's so sad. He's dying. He's bleeding. He's such a good person. And we met this guy like 5 minutes ago. We just met this guy, this Indian, this like mass murdering, sociopathic Indian guy, right? We just met him. He's dying now. and I'm supposed to give a shit. I'm supposed to cry about this. I'm supposed to get all emotional. I'm like, this game is so out of touch with how people would actually feel playing this. Like, why would anyone care about this random mass murdering sociopathic Indian guy who we just met 5 minutes ago, who just killed a bunch of people and then got shot? Why would we care? Man, that game's pissing me off. I don't want to talk about Red Dead Redemption 2 anymore because it's making me angry. It's pissing me off. It's irritating me. It's winding me up. That game is so retarded. It makes no sense. You know? Literally one of the dumbest games I've ever played. Do you know what? Do you know what pissed me off the most about that game though? Was while I was playing it, I was trying because again I talked about this in my review. I was kind of trying to force some fun out of the game by like riding around on my horse. And you know how the game lets you bond with your horse? It lets you like pet your horse and play with it and feed it and brush it and stuff like that. And like I was going around and like stomping all the liberal characters with my horse and trying to like trying to like run into them and stomp them. And I was calling it my based horse, right? And then in the final mission of the game, like the main part of the game before the epilogue, they kill the horse. They literally the game forces you to go to a specific point and then they kill your horse. And I remember when it happened, I literally, I gasped with air and I was brought to tears. I literally cried. I sat there crying my eyes out. I'm like, they killed my based horse. I'm getting teared up just thinking about it. And I'm just like, those bastards. That was the one thing. Those absolute bastards. That is the one thing about this game. The one bright spark that it had, that one saving grace was my based horse. And those bastards killed it. They literally scripted it in the mission that your horse would die. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So yeah, R.I.P. based horse. Based horse. I couldn't believe it, man. Couldn't believe it. I'm still torn out about it. I'm torn up about it today. Where was I in the chat? Because I get very immersed into games. I get very into them, as you know, and I can't believe those bastards killed my based horse. I can't believe it. The writers for modern games usually look like Phil Mitchell in a wig and makeup. Absolutely fine. Yeah, you see them and they've got like blue hair and piercings and they just look like absolute wrong uns, don't they? The Last of Us 2 story was terrible. Oh, mate, The Last of Us 2 was like that game was like Reddit tier. It was literally like, see if you take like a Reddit moderator and get them to write the story for a game. That was it. Yeah, Naughty Dog is dead. I tell you that. They are so disgusting, man. Like that. What's that guy's name that was supposedly the director of that game? Neil Cuckman or Neil Druckmann. I call him Neil Cuckman. That guy should be castrated. He should be kneecapped. I'm not even kidding. Thankfully, I never played that game and I never will. I loved both endings in Red Dead 2, but the build-up was questionable. Well, I don't love it because they killed my based horse. I'm glad. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad they killed Arthur Morgan. He deserved it, but you know, I can't believe they killed my based horse. I can't believe it. Felt like combat was the biggest downgrade between 1 and 2. Yeah, the combat in the first game was a lot better because the first game wasn't running on that crappy like GTA 5 engine that's like outdated and doesn't work. The first game actually runs and plays properly, but second game was garbage. Plus the AI in the first game was a lot better too, and the shooting mechanics were kept simple and they were a lot better. They were less gimmicky and they were more simple. Yeah, a lot better. They were. My favorite games of all time are the first 3 Ratchet and Clank games. The story is good and isn't bloated, and the humor is great. Yeah. Ratchet and Clank, interestingly, was developed by the same people, Insomniac, and I'm talking about the original Insomniac. The same people that developed Spyro, the original Spyro trilogy, and those are my favorite games of all time. So yeah, you can kind of see Ratchet and Clank as kind of a spiritual successor to the Spyro games. I like Ratchet and Clank too. I like all 3 of the original games. They're good. And yeah, it's same developer. The Spyro trilogy is my favorite games of all time. If you're not a football fan, did you ever like FIFA? I had one of the FIFAs. I had FIFA 2003 for the PS1. That's the only one I ever played, I think. And yeah, I enjoyed that. I used to like in that game you could like cripple people and like injure them on purpose and then get sent off. Like you could get your entire team like red carded or like enough of them to cancel the game and get disqualified. It was quite funny. Sonny Edwards, John Fury. John Fury's too big. So Sonny Edwards would literally like try and punch him in the leg, and he couldn't even reach his hips. Probably. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm exaggerating. FIFA was good around 8 years ago, but now it's literally the same gameplay every year. Yeah, exactly. FIFA, just like Call of Duty and just like Assassin's Creed, FIFA literally releases the exact same game every single year for full price. It's like 70 quid every year for a FIFA game, and normies buy it. That's what pisses me off about these normies in regards to gaming. They buy the same game every single year. Like what is wrong with these people? Why would you buy FIFA every single year? It's the same game. Except they slightly change the pixels of the players on the team, which is really the same. It's the same thing, but just a different graphical asset. You know, man, it's so stupid. I don't get modern gaming, man. It's the consumerist garbage annoys me. Have you played Middle Earth: Shadow of War? Yeah, I've got that. That's a good game. It's a great game. I enjoyed it. I did have some problems with it, but I felt the gameplay was very, very good. Like the combat was great. Like it was a little bit bloated, that game, and towards the end it starts to get a bit repetitive. But for the most part, it's a very fun game. I really enjoyed it. EA Sports Fight Night has to be the best. Yeah, yeah, I liked Fight Night. I enjoyed the Fight Night games. I enjoyed them all, particularly the last two. Any films you're looking forward to this year? I might watch The Iron Claw next week. To be honest, there's no films I'm looking forward to. Films are even worse than games. They're all just cultural Marxist propaganda, all of them, as far as I'm concerned. Just got no interest in them, you know. Saints Row, GTA. Yeah, I like some of the Saints Row games, particularly the third one. The first Saints Row game was a little bit it was a little bit mediocre, I thought, the first one, but it was okay. The second one I thought was really good, big improvement. The third one I think is a masterpiece. That's one of my favorite games of all time. The fourth one I felt was a bit disappointing because the fourth one was basically a DLC for the third one that was made into a full game. So it's essentially an expansion that they decided to release as a full game. So wasn't a big fan of the third one. Sorry, the fourth one. But yeah, I like the second and I love the third. I really like the third. I think I love that game. It's a great game. I never played Red Dead Redemption 2 because the price was ridiculous. It sounded like I made the right decision. Yeah, because I think they charged like, what was it, like £100 for like the deluxe edition or something like that, and then like £70 for the like regular edition. I think when I bought it, it was a few years later. I got it on sale for like 18 quid or something. But when it first came out, it was really overpriced. Fight Night Champion might have the worst soundtrack ever. Oh man, the soundtrack of that game is horrible. Like, yeah, that song. I'm the best. I'm the best. Funky fresh. I'm the best. Like that's a terrible song. And you know the what was it? What's that song? I think it's like, what is it, Tinchy Strider or Tiny Temper or one of these like stupid rappers. And it has that song, it goes like, I'm an extraterrestrial, came up out the fucking dirt like a vegetable. That song always makes me piss myself. It's so funny. Yeah, it's a terrible soundtrack though. That was a problem with the Fight Night games. They had such chavvy soundtracks. Absolutely terrible. I can remember in the Fight Night Round 2, they had Pitbull. Which plot to GTA 4 did you choose, Roman or Kate? I chose Roman. Yeah, I let Kate die, and I chose Roman because why not? It's annoying though because you know how the game that's another thing pissed me off about GTA 4. The game gives you the choice. Do you want to kill Dmitry Raskolov in revenge, or do you want to help Dmitry Raskolov and then make a lot of money? So naturally you would want I wanted to help Dmitry Raskolov because again you profiteer from it. But the problem is if you help Dmitry Raskolov, Roman ends up getting shot. Or is it yeah, Roman ends up getting shot, so I'm like, "Well, I don't really give a shit about Kate because Roman gives you the free taxi service, so you might as well keep him." Look, Kate gives you nothing essentially, but if you work with Roman, he gives you the free taxi service, so why would you let Roman die instead of Kate? It doesn't make sense, so unfortunately, yeah, the only real choice to make is to go and kill Dmitry Raskolov, which I didn't want to do, but yeah. But it's pointless anyway because even if you choose to spare Dimitri, you still have to kill him anyway in the next mission. The game forces you to do it. So again, it's kind of the illusion of choice. You've got no choice there. You still have to do it, you know? So it is what it is. Right, where was I? Yep, RIP Based Horse. I'll never forget you. He Based Horse. Based Horse got me through that game. He did. Based Horse. RIP Based Horse. Oh, I like Based Horse. I like some of the instrumental stuff on Fight Night Champion. So yeah, some of it was okay, but like the actual like licensed songs, I thought were awful. You know. Um, sorry, where was I? I keep losing my place in the chat. Yeah, yeah. Mate, I will never ever play a single one of them ever. Did you see the Starfield pronoun thing? Leftist game, mate. Starfield. That my cousin played that, and he told me it's literally just a walking simulator. You fly from planet to planet, and everything is just procedurally generated. So there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do in the game. You just walk around, and I'm like, this is like a normie's wet dream. Just procedurally generated nothing. That's the game, you know. I'll never play it, you know. Andre Bishop from Fight Night Champion was a juice head. He somehow went up from middleweight to heavyweight without losing stamina and also was able to take Isaac Frost's best punches. Yeah. I rooted for Isaac Frost. I wish they'd let you play through the story as Isaac Frost and have him win at the end, like like an alternate ending where Isaac Frost is the main character. That would have been better. I'd have enjoyed it. FIFA is a trash normie game, yeah. I haven't played since FIFA 2003. Did you not like Arthur Morgan because he was emotionless and cunty? I didn't like anything about Arthur Morgan. Nothing whatsoever. Literally one of the worst characters ever. One of the worst characters in gaming, as far as I'm concerned. Have you played City of Fear? Never played it, no. Never played it. Dev Rai, April 20th. If it happens, will you be interested? Who wins? I think Ryan has the ability to outbox Devon. He's got the speed, he's got the power from long range, he's got the movement, but the problem is he's got no chin, no heart. So he might take a dive. Like in my opinion, he did against what's his name? Tank. So yeah, probably. I played as Andre Bishop against Vitaly Klitschko on legacy mode, or legendary mode. And the AI knocked me down about 5 or 6 times before I could get back up again at the 8th round. It was so fun. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, Vitali was quite good in that game. He was. Although David Hay had like higher stats than both Klitschko's, which was weird. Which was funny because they brought that out right before, or like a few months before Klitschko getting schooled by, or Hay getting schooled by Klitschko. So it was funny. Captain Quark is my favorite game character of all time. Yeah. Yeah, from Ratchet and Clank. He's hilarious. He's a funny character. 70 quid, and you also have to risk more money to get good players, yeah. Reminds me of when they brought out that UFC game and they were charging people a $5 if they want to play as Bruce Lee. It's just so strange, isn't it? I barely managed to cut Vitali playing as Andre Bishop, yeah. Yeah, but Andre Bishop has like rocky heart, doesn't he? He can keep getting up, you know. He's got a lot of heart. FIFA, same game every year. I prefer Pro Evolution Soccer. Yeah, yeah. Didn't that one have a bit more of a complex class system or something? It was a bit different. Same with like Football Manager and that. Yeah, I hate games these days too. They're boring. Stop playing online. Yeah, yeah. There was so many modders on Fight Night, particularly Fight Night Champion. There were so many modders with unlimited stamina, and they would literally just walk forward and throw straight right hands to the body, and there was nothing you could do because they had unlimited stamina. That used to piss me off so much, and I just stopped playing it because I couldn't be bothered with it. Yeah, yeah. Round four had better online. It did. I was better at it. I think Laura would outbox Mayweather from long range, but I don't think I don't think he would get the decision personally. He would probably get robbed, but he would probably be the real winner. Stupid motherfucker, why you like that? I'm an extraterrestrial, came up out the fucking dirt like a vegetable. That's a great song. That's just that lyric right there, that line is makes it a great song, you know. Even though it's a terrible song, I like that lyric or that line. Yeah, it does have awful music. Champion does. Fight Night always had the most random fighters too. Forget current world champions. Let's add Jorge Arce and Kendall Holt instead. Yeah, I remember one of them, and they had it was Amin Asakainen. Do you remember him? He was like a random like Finnish European champion who got stopped in the first round by Matthew Macklin. Yet he was in Fight Night. And I remember they also had Victor Ortiz, like when he was just a prospect. One of them had there was like a secret character. His name was Fabulous. I think he was like based on a rapper or something. I think that was what do you call it? Fight Night Round 2. He was a secret character. And I remember Champion had Butterbean, which was quite interesting. I had him Butterbean. Round 3 had like made up fighters like Ramo, KO Ramo, and this big fat guy called Big E. He was like this big fat ginger guy. It was funny, man. It was like a classic fighting game thing there where they had like secret characters. I found it quite funny. But yeah, they would always have random fighters who you would never expect to be on it. Yeah, it was Tiny Temper. That was it. Is Nico the best GTA character? I think Nico was an interesting character. Like I don't like that game, but I do think that Nico was an interesting character. I do. Fight Night Champion has a good soundtrack. I don't think so. I don't think it does. Oh yeah, yeah. Do you like the song Chibe by Snoop Dogg? Yeah, Chibe, Chibe, Chibe. Da 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 da. That was quite a cool song. And it's funny because I think that song was actually written for the game. I think it was. What YouTubers you used to watch? I watched loads of YouTubers. I've watched loads over the years, you know. Don't even know where to start. I tend to only play older games. New games are either boring, woke, or both. Usually both. Yeah, usually both. They everything really, new punches ruined everything. And if you open legacy servers, you get threatened with legal action. Yeah, that's because EA are just so money grabbing these days. You know, they're money greedy. Is what it is. It's a shame Fight Night took away the ability to match any weight classes together. Sonny Edwards versus Butterbean needs to happen. Yeah. When I used to play Fight Night Round 3, I used to put featherweights in with heavyweights and see what happened, or try and beat a heavyweight with a featherweight. Like take Marco Antonio Barrera, for example, and fight Muhammad Ali, stuff like that. It could be quite funny. And I remember me and my mate used to play it, and we used to have random fights. We used to like close our eyes and then select someone randomly. And I can remember one time I was able to beat him. He was Jermaine Taylor, and I was Arturo Gatti, and I was able to beat him. So you could do funny things like that. But now they've removed the ability to have any weight class against each other. You know, so you can only fight someone within 3 weight classes. You can't fight like someone like 5 weight classes ahead, which is a shame because it was a fun challenge in the older games, you know? It was. I actually think Ryan Garcia is one of the most naturally talented boxers today. Can't see him being beating one of the tough guys though, as he lacks heart and motivation. Yeah, he's a pussy. He's a pretty boy with a glass chin who can't take a punch, but he's fast and he's got good speed. I mean, he's got good power. Clubber Lang versus Ivan Drago. Ivan Drago. Clubber would have some success with his strength early, like he would land some big wide shots. But I think Drago's speed, because Drago was quite quick, his stamina, his superior European boxing fundamentals, and his better conditioning, his size, his height and reach, as well as his straight punches. I think he'd get the better of him, and I think he'd knock him out late. Clubber Lang had terrible stamina, and he didn't know how to control his stamina. So I think Ivan Drago stops him late. Yeah, R.I.P. Carl Weathers. He passed away recently, didn't he? God bless him. I was watching a Butterbean fight on YouTube while my family went shopping next. I was so bored. Yeah, I was watching Butterbean fight today. I watched a couple of them. I like watching his fights on YouTube. I enjoy watching them. I watched them yesterday too. Did you see Strickland versus Sneeko? No. I know who that Sneeko is though. That guy's isn't he a streamer who like says he's a Muslim now? And yeah, Strickland's kind of a based MMA fighter, I heard, yeah. They had Chris Arreola and Eddie Chambers. And yeah, they did. Chris Arreola and Eddie Chambers in Fight Night Champion. It's funny because see when that game came out, I had Eddie Chambers as a friend on Facebook, and I also had him as a friend on Xbox Live. He used to play Fight Night. And I remember he went crazy on Facebook because he was like he was saying basically they added David Hay's stats and they made David Hay like way better than him and both the Klitschko's, and Eddie Chambers was going crazy about it on Facebook. It was funny. That was so funny. Yeah, Fabulous is an actual rapper. Also, he did one of the songs on the soundtrack of Fight Night Round 2. What Fabulous Feet or something. It was on the soundtrack. And yeah, he was a secret character in the game. Victor Ortiz was the toughest fighter to beat in the game for me. Roy Jones and Calzaghe were the easiest because they gas in 5 rounds. Yeah, particularly Roy Jones. Roy Jones was so easy to beat in Fight Night because his stamina was terrible. And you could hit him to the body so easily. I noticed that. Like when someone would play as Roy online, they would have to like exploit their way through it or they'd get beaten up and beaten. Also, on round 4, Mike Tyson was very easy to beat if you knew how to beat him, like how to exploit his style and beat him. But on Champion, he was so hard to beat. Like he was like overpowered in Champion. Like him and Isaac Frost were the most powerful ones in the game. Fight Night Champion had Billy Dibb and Sergio Mora. Yeah, they did. That's funny. Pure random, isn't it? Danny Jacobs as well, they had. Yep. Sonny Edwards, the final boss in Fight Night. Yeah, Sonny Edwards versus Isaac Frost. Imagine that. That new boxing game looks slow and clunky. Yeah. Look, do you know what that looks like to me? It's one of these like early access games that will just never be finished. It's like a tech demo to me. That's what it comes across as. So yeah, I'm not expecting great things. Not really expecting much from it, if truth be told. Ryan Garcia lost all his confidence when De La Homo groped him while dressed in drag, dressed in fishnets. They mentioned something about De La Hoya on the radio yesterday. I can't remember what they said, though. They also put non-LGBT and political stuff in games these days, but it's okay. Carl the Child-like character is 900 years old, according to the law. yeah. They'll make like a sexually suggestive like child who's supposed to be like a vampire, but they're actually like 500 years old or something, so it's okay. That makes it totally not creepy and weird at all, does it? Yeah. I mean, like taking Poison Ivy, who's like, again, we were talking about that DC game recently. Poison Ivy, who's like a sexually suggestive character, right? Always has been in every depiction of the character. They literally made that character a child in the new game and made it made it resemble Greta Thunberg, but like a child version of Greta Thunberg. Now, you can't tell me that that's not paedophilic. And they imply that she's in a lesbian relationship with Harley Quinn as well. They imply that. So, who's an adult, by the way. So, yeah, they're implying that this is like some sort of paedophilic relationship in that game. Written by Sweet Baby Inc., of course. Surprise, surprise. Prime Apollo Creed versus Drago. I think Apollo would put up a better fight in his prime, but I still think Drago would knock him out. Stops him late. He was far too big, too strong, too athletic, too powerful, too good, too skilled. He took him out easily when they fought, but I think in his prime he'd have lasted a few more rounds, but still would have gotten stopped. I think Drago by late stoppage. Or most of your family's normies. Most of my family's normies, but not all of them. There's a few based people in my family. Not as based as me, but still kind of based. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened with Strickland and Sneeko. Strickland's kind of based from what I've heard. When I'm bored, I usually watch The Absolute War. That was Johnny Nelson versus De Leon while drinking Aldi Iron Brew. Oh man, that would be horrible. That's a horrible evening. That is. It really is. I'd be more interested in Clubber Lang trash talk exchange with the Soviet leader and Ludmilla Drag. Yeah, could you imagine that? Nah, I don't hate Drago. I pity the fool. He's like, I must break you. That would be funny. It would be. Like Clubber Lang could trash talk and Drago would just stare you down and be like, I'm going to punish you, is what it is. Yeah, Strickland invited him to a spar, then slapped him, Sneeko. Oh, did he? I might watch that. I've not seen it. Did you ask Eddie Chambers what the AJ comment was about? What did he say? No, because this was years before then. Like I used to talk to Eddie Chambers on Facebook years ago, but I've not had that Facebook account for years, so I've not spoken to him in years. Don't know if he even remembers me. But yeah, I had him as a friend. In fact, I've still got him as a friend on Xbox Live, but he doesn't use it anymore. That account has been inactive for years. But yeah, he used to be on it quite a lot. Jody was just a boy in a man's body that night. Eddie Chambers was a good fighter, but he was too small, far too small for the to beat the elite heavyweights. Yeah, I agree. He was. Would have done a lot better at cruiserweight. I know he did fight at cruiserweight, but he picked the wrong opponent. He picked Tabaiza Machunu, and he got schooled. Who was a very awkward, slick fighter. If he'd have fought some more conventional cruiserweights, he might have had a decent career, but probably too late on in his career by that point. Making the weight was too difficult, I think. So, yeah, he was an okay heavyweight contender, but just wasn't an elite fighter. He was kind of a fringe contender, but a decent heavyweight contender. Oh yeah, Roy was terrible in Champion. He was. Fight Night Champion had only one bantamweight, and that was Donaire. Yeah, they did. He was the only bantamweight in that entire division in the game. What's the point in that? I mean, they couldn't have added one more bantamweight. I mean, come on. I know you can make them yourself in Character Creator, but still kind of silly, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, modern gaming has been dying for years, is what it is. Yeah, VR gaming. See, that's one thing I don't like. I was always kind of taught not to sit too close to the TV because it'll hurt your eyes. Now people are using VR. Tells you the times we live in, man. It really does. Prime Drago on paper should be every Rocky character in the franchise. Yeah. Absolutely. Drago was the best fighter in Rocky. Rocky beating him was so contrived and so unrealistic. Drago would have won easily if it was a real fight. Especially, you put Sylvester Stallone in the ring with Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren wins easy. Yeah, speaking of Dolph Lundgren, if the Punisher was real, he would have his hands full with all the degenerates around these days. Yeah, it's funny because Dolph Lundgren played the Punisher in one of the movies. But yeah, if the Punisher was real, like he would have to execute just like 90% of society nowadays, all the degenerate, like subhuman reprobates in the world, just absolute degenerates. He would have his hands full. He really would. I'm not sure he could handle it if truth be told. Hey woman, you bring your pretty little face up to my apartment, and I'll show you a real man. I thought the Creed movies were terrible. Yeah, they were awful. I seen the first two. I didn't see the third one. I didn't like either of them. Thought they were awful. Sneeko is a cut cold red pill scammer, basically. Also, he's like Andrew Tate, basically. Just another one. Yeah, it makes sense. Glasgow versus Cunningham, very close fight. I actually gave it to Glasgow, but only just. It was a very, very close fight. I thought that his effective aggression got him the win because Cunningham basically ran most of the fight. Like, he maybe did land more punches, Cunningham, from long range, but most of it was ineffective arm punches. Whereas Glasgow was coming forward, forcing the fight. And the way I score fights, I favour the aggressor, especially if they're an effective aggressor. And I thought Glasgow won the fight by landing the cleaner, more effective punches and being the effective aggressor, you know? A movie about the Dragos would be so much more interesting than another Creed movie. Yeah, exactly. Because I thought that the guy who played Drago, or the guy who played Drago's son, actually did a great job acting wise. And I rooted for him in the movie. And I'm glad that he knocked out Creed in the first fight. Even though he got DQ'd, he still gave him a beating and knocked him out, you know? Yeah, I like the first Creed more than the second, although I did prefer the scene in the second where Drago lays him out. I like that. One of the original scripts for one of the Creed movies was supposed to have Deontay Wilder as the antagonist and was supposed to be Clubber Lang's son. Imagine that. Imagine I could picture that as well. That would be funny. Never played Fortnite. Never played it. Paul Glasgow fought his way into a mandatory position only to lose to Charles Martin on a knee injury, yeah. And I think he would have beaten Charles Martin if he didn't get injured. I think he would have. Yeah, Fortnite's starting to lose popularity, so it'll be gone soon enough, you know. I've never played it, so I don't have a comment on it, you know. Yeah, I agree. Glasgow would have won that fight, I think. Afolabi versus Cunningham. I think Cunningham wins on points, but Afolabi had the power to drop him and knock him out if he caught him. I think, again, similar to David Hay, I think he might be able to catch Cunningham and drop him a couple of times, but I think Cunningham would survive, and I think I'd favour him on points. Close fight, though. I do give Afolabi a puncher's chance. Sergio Mora and Vlad are the same rating in Fight Night Champion. Oh, that's funny. That is crazy. It's funny. Tommy Gunn versus Clubber Lang would be a good fight. Yeah, it would be. I favour Clubber Lang, too strong. But Tommy Gunn was a tough guy himself, and he had that big left hook, so he could win it. Give him a puncher's chance. Dolph Lundgren punched Stallone for real, and Stallone was sent to the hospital with a cracked sternum and ribs. Yeah, apparently he was. Oh, Dolph Lundgren was a legit fighter. Like, that guy competed in martial arts competitions, and he boxed too. Like, he could fight. That guy could genuinely fight. He could. Yeah, Apollo would have beaten Rocky if it was real. Like, because especially that second fight would have been stopped. It would have. No way would that fight have been allowed to continue after the second round. It would have been stopped in real life, you know. Same with the Drago fight. The Drago fight even worse. Apollo only lost to Rocky because he's an idiot. He didn't train for the first fight, and he was miles ahead on points in the second fight, but stood toe to toe with Rocky in the last round. Yeah. But Apollo was a bit of a emotionally immature idiot, and he cost himself the victory 2 times. You know, is what it is. I think people like Tate were put there to mislead people, or people that were about to be based, and it worked. Yeah, he turned them towards Islam and polygamy and all sorts of degeneracy. Just a complete fraud as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, in the second one, Apollo put a battering on Rocky, but then he just ran out of gas and got stopped, you know? Kind of like Isaac Frost against Andre Bishop. Isaac Frost should have won it. Hey, do you think Naoya Inoue handles Luis Nery? Or how do you think Naoya Inoue handles Luis Nery? I don't think he goes past 5. Just this the American style, saying they don't have spirit. Yeah, I think Inoue stops him. I'd say from mid to late rounds. I could see like say from like round 5 to round 9 or something. I think mid to late. I think Inoue stops him. I don't really rate Lewis Neary. I think Inoue stops him. Has anyone played League? No. Mark Demori versus Prime John Fury. That's a hard one. I'd probably go Mark Demori. Probably on points in a close fight. That would be a close fight, I think. Remember Afolabi took a dive against the property millionaire Mario Days. Yeah, remember that? That was such a weird fight. It was because it's weird because I think that was right after he fought Hook in the fourth fight and he got stopped in round 9. And then he fought Mario Dazer, who's like nowhere near on the level of Hook. And he knocked him out like with a body shot in round 3 and it looked pure fake. I do think that was a dive. I don't know for certain, but I think it most likely was. It looked like it to me. Do you think Afolabi should have won any of the Hook fights? No, he didn't win any of them. He lost all of them clearly. The first fight wasn't even close, wasn't even competitive. I think like 10-2 for Hook, I think, in the first fight. Maybe even wider. The second fight was closer. I think, say, like a 7-5, 8-4 win for Hook. The third fight, Hook clearly won. Wasn't even close. Hook clearly won. And the fourth fight, Hook completely dominated and stopped him. So, yeah, Hook was the better fighter of the two, and he won every single fight, in my opinion. I know that in the second fight they gave it a draw. I thought Hook clearly won. I thought he won all of them. What was sadder, Chubbs or Apollo Creed? What death was sadder? I'd say Chubbs. Ricky Conlon, Tony Bellew would beat Drago. Yeah, yeah, he lost to Tony Bellew, but he's able to beat Drago. Yeah, sure. The Creed movies ruined the legacy of Apollo by making that he cheated on his wife. Exactly. So people who liked Apollo Creed as a character, those movies are just like insinuating that no, he was a scumbag. He cheated on his wife and had an illegitimate child that he never looked after. I mean, he never raised his child, so he was just a deadbeat dad, basically. I mean, if you were a fan of Apollo Creed, there's no way that you'd be happy with that, you know. Also, I was looking at this recently. Do you remember Jun Long Zhang? I do remember him, yeah. A guy who was 20-0 but never had any real fights and was said to have killed Victor Emilio Ramirez in one, but it wasn't on BoxRec. Well, it actually was on BoxRec, but they removed it. I remember that at the time. I remember talking about that on Facebook when it happened. And basically, the news about it came out. And he had first round knockout wins on his record against Victor Emilio Ramirez, I think George Arias. So several tough guys, you know, durable guys who usually go the distance. And he apparently had a WBA title. But then the WBA, I think, later released a statement saying that they'd had no confirmation or no proof that those fights actually happened. So the fights got removed from the record. So yeah, that was an interesting situation. And I think that I've heard rumors anyway that the Chinese government were behind it, and I think that they fabricated a record for him. You know, Frost versus Drago. I think Frost because he'd catch him early, and Isaac Frost's like for like the first 4 or 5 rounds is unstoppable, and I can't see Drago running. I think Drago would stand his ground and try to knock him out, but he would get stopped. I think. But he'd give it a go. But he did have better. Yeah, I agree. Drago had better endurance, but I don't think he could take Isaac Frost punches. I think he would get knocked out. If Drago fought cautiously and fought to survive early on, then he could stop him late. I think so. I do. I liked Apollo's quote in the second one when he yelled, "Man, I won, but I didn't beat him." Describes a lot of decisions in real life, unfortunately. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He won, but he didn't win in spectacular fashion like he was supposed to, essentially. You know, he fought to his level, which he felt he shouldn't have done, you know. I never watched any of the Creed or Rocky movies. I've seen all the Rocky movies and I've seen the first 2 Creed movies. I haven't seen the third one. Drago, because yeah, I would have read that, didn't I? Sorry. Mark Demore hits harder and probably has a better chin. Yeah, he probably does. Yeah. I would probably favor Demore over John Fury. Probably would. You reckon someone? Yeah. I was talking about that earlier. Someone might lay him out if he approaches the wrong person. You've seen Americans way bigger than Inoue calling him out for the payday. Yeah, like Tank Davis and that. But Inoue is the A side, so let him conduct his career as the A side. That's what I say. Let the Americans come to him. Let them go to Japan for the fight. Why not? That's what they would do if they were the A side. So let him do it. I remember Afalabi chinned that prospect on the Povetkin versus Wok undercard. Yeah, that was Chakikev, Rakim Chakikev. He was a Olympic gold medalist, I think, and he fought like an idiot that night. Like Chakikev should have won that fight. Like he was beating the crap out of Afalabi, and then he threw so many punches and gassed himself out, and ended up getting knocked out. Like I think in a rematch, Chakikev would have won. I think. Check out RAF exclusive 2.0. He does some great boxing breakdowns. Yeah, I might check him out. Apollo was always a guy with a big ego and bravado, but behind it all, he was a good guy. But the Creed movies ruined his character completely. Exactly. Apollo was a loudmouth like prick, or at least he acted like that. But then you saw him at home with his wife, and he actually was an honorable man who cared about his legacy and cared about fighting for his country, fighting for his family. Like he cared about his children, his wife. He was a humble family man deep down. But when it comes to the Creed movies, they retconned it so that no, he was cheating on his wife and he was a complete scumbag. Basically, that's what and he had an illegitimate son that he never raised. I mean, does that sound like the character that he was portrayed as in that movie, who was more complex than that? No, it doesn't sound like him at all to me, but it ruins the character. It's a complete retcon of the character, Apparently, Rocky's son was born 1 year after he was dead. Yeah. That was that just an inconsistency, like a plot hole. Doesn't surprise me. Rocky versus Rambo. I go with Rambo. Like Rocky could probably punch harder, but Rambo would like break his neck or something, and plus Rambo would probably use a gun or a knife anyway. But yeah, Rambo would probably have better like actual overall fighting skills. Being a soldier and that. My favorite fight in Fight Night Champion was playing as Frost and battering Raymond Bishop. Yeah, that was my favorite one. That was the best level in the championship mode, without a doubt. Absolutely. Zach Parker versus Tyron Zoiga. If Zoiga has anything left, it could be interesting. Yeah, a few years ago that would have been interesting because Zoiga, when he was WBA champion, he could box a bit, but then he just completely and utterly like went off the rails and just stopped developing. And I thought he was retired for a while. Zach Parker, I really rate. I think he's a very, very good fighter. But what he did in that John Ryder fight rubbed me up the wrong way. Why would you take a dive against John Ryder? I don't under. It's like they paid him off. He could have won that fight easily. All he had to do was keep it at long range, but he just quit on his stool, claiming he had a hand injury. Which, from what I've heard, the hand injury was dubious. A lot of people didn't believe it anyway. But yeah, Zach Parker, I think, is a better fighter than Zoiga. But I do agree. A few years ago, Zoiga's stamina, his heart, that would have made it interesting. Because he could box for 12 rounds at a decent pace. But I think Zach Parker is the technically better of the two. I think he's bigger. I think he hits harder. Slightly better defense. I think he wins it probably on points now. It'll be interesting though. I wouldn't be surprised if he stopped him either, because Zoiga's been so inactive that I doubt he's got much in the tank. But in his prime, he had a lot of stamina, and he was able to beat Smigger. So that version of him could have won. Opinions on KSI? Never watched him as a boxer. Never watched him. Yeah, European level boxer at least, at very most, actually. Rooting for Zoig. At least he has shown heart, unlike Parker. Yeah. Well, Parker actually did show heart when he fought Darryl Williams, because he hurt his arm badly in that fight in the early rounds, and he fought basically like 9, 10 rounds with one arm, and still won the fight. But and I actually thought he won that clearly. Rewatching it, people say it was a robbery. I don't think it was. I rewatched it. I thought he won clearly, but yeah, then he just quits for no reason basically, or claiming he had a hand injury against John Ryder. I suspect that the John Ryder Canelo fight was already signed, and they bought Zach Parker off. I honestly think they paid him off. That's the only way I can make sense of it. If you notice, John Fury is very careful who he tries to intimidate. He was terrified of speaking back to Dillian when Dillian called him Steve Bunce. Yeah, because Dillion's about the same size as him or bigger. But he'll go up to a guy like Carl Frampton, who's a midget, and act the big one with him, won't he? So yeah, he's a coward. John Fury is a coward. I've no doubt about it. A walking star jump, basically. Rakim Chakaev looked like a tank, fought like an idiot. Yeah, he did. Especially in that fight, he did. Happy to put it on people like Frampton, but not people close to his own size. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that tells you everything you need to know about that situation. Yeah, Rambo. If Rambo had a knife or a gun, it'd be a complete mismatch. You know, in a fist fight, it'd be interesting, but I still favor Rambo. Yeah, Raymond Bishop was an unlikable character. Yeah, he was, and he was jealous of his brother. You know, he really was. Very insecure character he was. Raymond Bishop's nickname was Big Baby, so that should have been a warning sign that he wasn't good. Yeah, like Big Baby Miller, isn't it? He was the original Big Baby. Yeah. I've not watched it yet, but I plan to. That's on my to-do list, is to watch Chariots of Fire. Yeah, I want to watch that movie. The people John mouthed off to: KSI Jake, Anthony Taylor, Frampton, KSI Trainer, and Frotch. Yeah, all smaller than him. Never picks on anyone his size. Yeah, of course he doesn't. Dean White would absolutely batter John Fury. Yeah, probably would. Probably would. Dean Fury now. He's Dean Fury now. Do you still think Taylor at his prime could beat Crawford? Absolutely. I think you take Josh Taylor at his absolute prime, put him in the ring with Crawford. I think Josh Taylor wins. I do. Probably on points. I think he wins. Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be an exhibition with Rambo. Wouldn't be a boxing match. He'd fight to the death, and he'd make sure that he wins. You know, he's a much higher level of fighter. Creed 3 isn't great, by the way, but watch it, please. I don't know if I can be bothered watching it. Weakest division right now? I don't know, man. I don't know. No idea. Creed 3 has one good scene where Bellew gets knocked out. Well, that's always fun. You know, Bellew getting knocked out is worth a watch. Could probably watch it for that scene, you know. Is what it is. I always wanted to see Josh Taylor versus Sean Porter. That would have been a great fight. I think Taylor would have outboxed him, won on points. I think they used to spar. At least I've heard they did. I think Taylor would win that fight at his prime. Oh, yeah, middleweight is so boring. I mean, who's even there? What, Janibek? What, Liam Williams? Like, who's even at middleweight? Barely anything. The most northern place in Scotland. Well, I've been basically all over Scotland. I've been to like Fort William. I've been to Inverness. Yeah, I've been all over. I don't know where's the most northern part of Scotland. Like I've never been. I've been to like the Isle of Skye, and places like that. I don't think. I know I've never been to Stornoway or that far north, but I've been close to. You know, like I said, I've been to the Isle of Skye, places like that. Hatman and John Fury, two men you wouldn't want to face on the cobbles back in their primes. Yeah, like you're saying, Lenny McLean would be scared if those guys were on the cobbles, you know. He wouldn't want none of it. I thought Sean Porter beat Thurman and Spence. I agree. He definitely beat Thurman, in my opinion. I thought he won that fight clearly. I thought so. Bellew, the hypocritical roid head, says drug cheat should not be allowed to fight. Yet he wanted to fight Fury. I wish Bellew did pop, yeah. And you notice how he was complaining when he was being drug tested for the what do you call it fight, the Usyk fight, he was complaining about his own drug testing situation. Golovkin has fallen off the face of the earth. Yeah, where is Golovkin? Just disappeared after that fake Canelo fight, the third one, where he took an obvious dive. Hopefully Tim Tszyu will move up. Yeah, he might. He can make a good middleweight. He might even be better at middleweight, you know? I think he's more suited to middleweight. I've heard Creed 3 is We as Kings the movie. Probably. It probably is. Hatman might be the one person his own size who John Fury could beat. Yeah, maybe. No, but Hatman's like a top level ABA heavyweight, so you never know. You know, Hatman was also like the hardest doorman in London. So who knows? Lee the Bumnello fake loss ruined Golovkin. Yeah, he's probably ashamed of himself, as he should be, for taking a dive in that fight, you know? Throwing it. Hatman too big, too strong for John Fury, yeah. Yeah, John Fury would shut right up if he saw Hatman on the doors. Yeah, exactly. Hatman was also an ABA level boxer. He was an ABA level heavyweight. However, there's no footage or photographs that he's produced of any of his career. Interesting, you know? Yeah, Bellew wanted his opponents drug tested as much as possible, but not himself. Yeah, he did. He was complaining because he claimed that while he was being drug tested for the Usyk fight, he it was interrupting his training camp, he said. So yeah, is what it is. That tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? About that situation. Even with the roids, Usyk destroyed him with that funny knockout. Yeah, you never know. Maybe the drug testing forced him to get off the roids, and maybe that's why Bellew had no stamina all of a sudden, whereas he'd had stamina in the past. You know, in that fight he gassed out pretty quickly. Maybe it was drug testing that caused it. So he shot himself in the foot with his harsh stance on drug testing, you know. He trained at Fitzroy Lodge after David Hay left. Are you on about Hatman? Is that where he trained? Golovkin just couldn't handle the elite head movement and counterpunching of Canelo. Yeah, he was scared of the counterpunching. You know, he's got to be careful. I mean, you don't want the man to die, do you? You don't want him to die of the sheer counterpunching. You know, got to be careful of the head movement and the counterpunching. Do all bullies seem to pick on people they have control over or are smaller? It's these two usually. Yeah, because bullies are cowards who, you know, they feel strong by picking on little guys, you know, or little people, you know, little things, you know. Why would you pick on something smaller than you, you know? Clearly you're a coward if you do it. That's pathetic. I hate bullies. I can't stand them. Absolute cowards is what they are. Absolute scum they are. The really interesting fight is Hatman versus Eddie Hearn, who claimed he was 4-0 with 3 KOs as an amateur. Is that Eddie Hearn's record? Is that what he claims? Interesting. Dunnet Head is the most northerly point of mainland Scotland, and John O'Groats is the most northern village. Interesting. I don't think I've been to either of them. So I've not been as far north Scotland as I could, you know. Thinking about it now, I'd really like to see Janibek against Tim Tszyu. Yeah, that would be a good fight. I'd probably favour Janibek actually in that fight because he's a bit more established at middleweight. But Tim Tszyu, I'd say, has a little bit more potential. But Janibek could win that fight, I think, if they fought now, you know. Maybe Bellew, maybe Bellew cannot roid as much. And it threw off his plan. His speeches backfired in the end. Maybe drug testing can work, but it's still garbage. Yeah, exactly. Maybe if Bellew had just kept his mouth shut, he'd have been able to juice up for that fight, got through it, and then got a gift decision, and he might have been undisputed champion and a boxing legend. But nope, he had to run his mouth off about drug testing. There you are. We got a real result in a real fight. Is what it is. I can even remember Canelo throwing, or I can't even remember Canelo throwing a counterpunch in the last 10 years. He just walks forward in a straight line, winging haymakers. That's all Canelo does. Like again, I can't think of Canelo throwing counters. Like, when was the last time he did that? Especially against a tall guy who can move behind a jab, you know? Canelo's fights are so obviously fake, you know? Hatman's actually pretty based, but not on YouTube. Yeah, he's so based, but he has to hide his real opinions behind a paywall. You got to pay him to hear his real opinions on things. You know, is what it is. Yeah, look, Hatman will say anything to make money. He's a grifter. That's all he is. You know. I think Pacquiao absolutely schools Valero, wins on points. I give Valero a puncher's chance, but Pacquiao was another level. He would school him and win on points. I think, you know. I think he schools him on the back foot. The bullies always mouth off to people, usually, and barely get physical. Yeah, they'll only get physical if they know that there's no threat. Like, they know they're not going to get hit. If you actually hit one, they'll panic and look to gang up on you. You know, it's what it is. It's what they do. You know, it's what it is. Ward versus Canelo. That would depend on who it's rigged for. You know, who's taking the dive or who's going to get the decision. You know. Yeah, Joshua will either carry Ngannou or he'll just blow him away. You know, he ends that fight wherever he wants to, you know. Golovkin doesn't give a crap anymore. Can't find any news about him. Russia Kazakh media reports him maybe running for chairman of the National Olympic Committee. In my opinion, he should give back all his money that he made from that Canelo fight. He should refund all the tickets to everyone who bought. And yeah, he should hang his head in shame and admit that he's a fraud. That's what I think he should do. I have no respect for Golovkin whatsoever. That man is a coward and a simp, and I don't care what he says. To me, he sold out every single one of his fans. Literally sold them out big time. That man strikes bias, yeah. How do you think Diego Corrales' career would have been if he didn't get killed in the motorcycle accident? And who would you have picked in a trilogy fight between Corrales and Castillo? I think I would have picked Castillo in the third fight because he still had a few fights left in him, whereas Corrales, I think, was pretty shot at that point. So yeah, I'd have gone with Castillo in the rematch. I think Corrales' career would have been better if he didn't get into trouble and if he didn't have that, like you say, that accident. You know, he could have had a much better career. Like, he had a lot of talent, wasn't the most skilled, very tough though, had a lot of heart. You know, he was a decent fighter. You know, he could have done a lot better, I think. Have you have you said you've still not learned to drive? I suppose driving isn't a must in the UK typically anyway. Yeah, I still haven't learned to drive, but it is on my to-do list. Like, I've got the money for it. I can afford it, but I just can't be bothered with it at the moment, you know. I'll get to it eventually. I'll need to at some point, you know. Probably Bruno on points. I think he just outboxed him when on points. Yeah, yeah, Valero did show some skills there, but that was like right at the end of his career. I think that was his last fight. But he also did show some defensive vulnerabilities, and I think Pacquiao was a much higher level of fighter than DeMarco. You know, I even think DeMarco could have won a rematch there, but Pacquiao, I think, schools him, wins it clearly. Yeah, Ward destroy Bumnello's nuts. That would be the only way for him to really hurt Canelo, you know? Yeah, I think he's probably retired too. I mean, one can only hope. I hope he enjoys that money that he scammed off of his fans, you know? In a real fight, Ward beats Canelo. Ward at least has some okay skills, whereas Canelo has no skill. Like, Canelo's just a punching bag. And let's not forget, Ward's way bigger than him. Let's not forget that. Yeah, he could school him. Did you hear a 15-year-old killed a bus driver in Elgin recently? That's a wild case. No, I never heard about that, no. Elgin, that's up near Inverness, isn't it? No, I didn't hear about that. No idea. I'll need to look that up. I need to look it up, see what happened. Floyd versus Corral is one of the most blatant fixes ever. Yeah, yeah. Jay Prince, I think, admitted that that was a fix, or as good as. They basically offered Corrales help with a legal situation, and he took a dive. Yeah, the judges would be a big factor in that one. Ajit Caballel versus Dubois. I picked Caballel. I think he makes Dubois quit. Much better fighter, better skills, more durable. Maybe just as much power. Just as much speed. I think he's a better fighter by far. I think he wins it. Who are you picking in the if the Daniel Duquit versus Hrgovic fight gets made? I think Triple Knee will quit again. Yeah, Hrgovic by stoppage. Hrgovic is more athletic. He's more skilled, tougher, more experienced, at least from the amateurs, and comparable experience as a pro. I think Hrgovic late stoppage. Sven, the media created narratives that Dubois has heart because Miller barely threw anything back. People believe it. Look, Miller is literally like a punching bag who was just right there to be hit. If that had been Usyk in there, you think Dubois would have done any better than he did the first fight? No, he'd have gotten schooled again. It is what it is. I still don't rate Daniel Dubois much, It is what it is. Valero would have gone down as a great if he didn't die so young, yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, all the first round knockouts he had were like record breaking in that division. Salvador Sanchez versus Manny Pacquiao at super featherweight. I think Pacquiao's a bit too big, a bit too athletic. I think he'd win on points. Good one versus Triple Knee, yeah. The reason Floyd is so defensive and insecure in every interview is because he knows his career was fake and deep down he feels like a fraud. Yeah, he's always been a very insecure, emotionally unstable individual. And like you say, it's because he knows he's a fraud. Hrgovic is a weird one. Good, talented fighter, but he has fights where he just doesn't show up. Yeah, like the Zhang fight. He was awful in that fight. Could have done so much better, in my opinion. But it's because he hasn't developed. He hasn't been active enough. He hasn't been gradually increasing his opposition. I mean, he fought Mark Demore in his last fight, who I would say is the level of the guys he was fighting in his debut, in his first 5 fights. He's gone backwards in terms of his competition, so he hasn't developed at all. So he hasn't gotten the most out of his talent, I just don't like the way he's been marketed either. We're talking about him being a boogeyman and being ducked, but he didn't go out there and promote himself, did he? So it's completely inconsequential. To me, he's a high risk, low reward fight for anybody, and he hasn't developed, and he's not as good as he could have been. It's a shame, really. How tall are you, Nordic? I think I'm about 5'8". I thought I was. See, I thought I was about 5'5", but I think I'm actually taller. It's weird because I haven't actually measured my height since I was a kid, so I don't know. I thought I was shorter than I actually am. I think I'm about 5'8", something like that. Loma versus Pacquiao. Pacquiao, too fast, too strong. Loma's more skilled than Pacquiao, but Pacquiao's far too fast, far too strong, far too unorthodox. I think his unorthodox movements, his great foot speed, he'd get in there, he'd catch Loma, he'd drop him, and I think he'd win on points. So Pacquiao on points. I feel like Loma has underachieved. He sold out for the money, took a dive, standing up against Teofimo Bumpez. Yeah, he did. He took a dive. An obvious one, too. And got robbed against Haney, yeah. And even against Haney, he kind of let him off the hook. He should have stopped him, really, because the guy's got no power. So why aren't you stopping him? But yeah, the Teofimo fight was clearly a fixed fight. And yeah, Lomachenko sold out as far as I'm concerned, is what it is. Mark Demore's last opponent before Hrgovic was a 5'6" former featherweight, and he still didn't stop him. Yeah, Mark Demore. And how did he have the record that he had? I just don't understand it, man. It makes no sense. Really makes no sense. I think 140 would have been Valero's absolute limit. I think the talent at 147, like Prime Thurman, Porter, Brook, and etc., would have been too much. Yeah, yeah. I think what would have been his biggest problem, Valera, would have been a slick counterpuncher. Like, could you imagine someone like Marquez, or even like tall guys like Oscar De La Hoya, guys like that? He wouldn't have been able to get past the long reach and jump in with that left hand. Like, above lightweight, I think Valera would have been very limited. He would have been great at lightweight, but or he would if he'd have continued at lightweight, but above that, he'd have been very limited. John Fury allegedly was one of these legendary bare knuckle fighters, yet there's no video proof he ever took a single part in a bare knuckle match. Yeah, kind of like Paddy Monaghan, if you know who he is. If some of you guys from the old Facebook forums, the old Facebook boxing forums, would know who Paddy Monaghan is. He was similar. He had a similar sort of. I was undefeated on the cobbles. I had all these bare knuckle fights and that. One of these guys. That's what. That's what John Fury's like. Undefeated backyard pit fighter. One of them. I don't rate Mayweather at all. I think he was an absolute fraud. Just my opinion. Josh Taylor versus Subriel Matias. If they fought now, Subriel Matias knocks him out inside of 4 rounds. Taylor in his prime beats him on points, I think. So yeah, prime for prime, Taylor on points. Who do you think are some of the biggest overachievers in boxing? Overachievers. Deontay Wilder shouldn't have gone anywhere near as far as he did. Carl Froch. Who else is there? Those are 2 that come to mind. I don't know. Those are the 2 that come to mind. Yeah, Hatton could, like, Valero could hurt Hatton with the left hand and knock him out, but I think Hatton could outlast him. Like, he could get inside, get him to the body, break him down, use his size and strength, and yeah, break him down late and stop him. So yeah, I'd favour Hatton in that fight. Paul Williams versus Thomas Hearns. Yeah, I think Hearns would knock him out. Like, Paul Williams was very, very talented, great stamina, threw a lot of shots, but I think Thomas Hearns was a lot more accurate, a much sharper puncher. I think he would knock him out. So yeah, favour Thomas Hearns in that fight. It'd be a great fight though, and a very interesting one, But yeah, that'll be sorry guys, that would be a situation where, Paul Williams would try to use his size and his work rate to overwhelm him. And I just think the sharper punches of Thomas Hearns would get the better of him, I liked Kell Brook as a fighter, but I can't like him outside of it. He's too fruity. Yeah, he's a weirdo. I 5 messages on my phone. Eddie, I told Eddie, if I can't get me can, I'll fight Golovkin, BLM, yeah. White Lives Matter. Lenny McLean is 2000 in the streets. Yeah, sometimes it's 2000s. Other time it's 3000. Yeah, 2000 in the streets. Yep. Deontay Wilder fan club. White Lives Matter. White Lives Matter. All lives matter. Yeah, but not as much as white lives. White lives matter more. I'm kidding. I'm kidding, obviously. All lives matter. Before some idiot thinks I'm being serious, After seeing that Lopez versus Ortiz fight, I now realize how bad Lopez actually is. Well, I've been saying it for years. That guy's an absolute bum, an absolute fraud, Jaime Munguia has one of the most overrated boxer in modern day. He got gift decisions against mid-tier Takashi Inoue and journeyman level fighter Dennis Hogan, who got stopped by Zhu and Charlo. Yeah. I kind of see Jaime Munguia as a bit of a punching bag. Like, he's a tough guy, and he's big, and he's strong, and he hits hard, but barely any boxing skill. I won't say no boxing skill whatsoever, but barely any. I don't rate him skill-wise at all. Oh, yeah, Tommy Hearns knocks Mayweather out. No doubt. Yeah, he got stabbed, didn't he, on holiday? Was he, like, stabbed in the leg or something? Something like that. I think it was the leg anyway, if I remember rightly. I know he got stabbed, but I couldn't remember where. But yeah, that's what you get when you act like a sodomite and you talk like a sodomite, Didn't a sodomite get stabbed recently in the UK? Yeah, can't say it's that big a loss. Truth be told, I think Mungia has improved since then, but he's not elite. Oh, he's improved, which is natural. You know, you're naturally going to improve when you fight, especially if you're young. You know, you're going to develop. It's only natural. Be back in a minute. Just go to the toilet. All right, what we're talking about. I've completely forgotten what the conversation was then. Let me get back to where I was in the chat so that I can get caught up. Right, where was I? Mungia was actually quite impressive against Ryder, even though Ryder was a bit washed. Yeah, I didn't see that fight. But I know he apparently stopped him. So, yeah, it's quite impressive because Ryder doesn't often get stopped, does he? What happened to Bradis Prescott? I'm assuming he's retired. I'm sure the last I heard of him was like he got stopped by that Russian guy. What was his name? Dmitry Mikalenko or some name like that. I can't remember. I'm sure he stopped Bradis Prescott. I think that was one of the last like named fighters that he fought. I'm assuming he became a journeyman and then retired. I don't want to be getting involved in that crap. But I've never taken BLM as Black Lives Matter. Never taken it that way. No, BLM is a cultural Marxist terrorist organization. That's what they are. Yeah. Look, at very least, he's fun to watch. You know, Munguia's an entertaining fighter to watch, at very least. Floyd ducked Khan because he was all wrong for him, yeah. Khan had speed and movement on the outside, which is what Floyd doesn't like, so he might have beat him, you know? He might have. In a real fight, anyway. Apparently, he tried to force himself onto someone who refused his advances. Oh, really? I see. I wish Floyd had just fought him instead of having to listen to Khan for years go on about how his speed and explosiveness is all wrong for Mayweather. Yeah. I wouldn't have minded seeing it. But maybe Khan just refused to take a dive, is what it is. Remember that Paul Floyd did? Khan won it. Yeah, and then he ended up fighting Maidana instead, who Khan beat, you know? Yeah, so that was, yeah, just what I said, yeah. Ridiculous. Yeah, and Maidana beat Mayweather. He did and got robbed. Then took a dive in the rematch. I would pick Morale, Charlo, Mabili, and Benavidez to beat Munguia. I agree. I'd pick them too. Munguia is a complete manufactured fraud like Canelo and Cesar Chavez. Yeah. Again, look, the way I see Munguia, he's a tough guy, big guy, entertaining, but not a great fighter. Not a very skilled fighter, anyway. If you try the Floyd blueprint these days, you will end up like Bumdrade and Tank looking to be heading in that direction. Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of even the normie boxing fans are sick and tired of that nonsense, you know? Prescott is lower weight class Darnell Boone, yeah. Yeah, yeah, just a dangerous puncher who could beat anybody on a bad night. Dangerous puncher. Adonis Stevenson, here's a good fight. Adonis Stevenson versus Joe Calzaghe. Here's what I think would happen in that fight. I think Stevenson would catch Calzaghe, and I think he'd drop him, and I think he'd hurt him badly. But I think Calzaghe would get up, and I think he would go ape shit, and he would beat the crap out of Stevenson on the inside. And I think Calzaghe would come from behind and either stop him late or just outwork him down the stretch and win by decision. So yeah, I think Stevenson has a chance at a knockout early, and he might drop Calzaghe, but I think Calzaghe would come back to win. I think he would. Floyd saw that Skype tape and said that hand speed is too much. Yeah, yeah, he saw Khan on Skype, caught on the camera, you know. Margarito and Casamayor would have beaten Mayweather. Yeah, he ducked both of them. Definitely Margarito. I think he would have beaten the crap out of Floyd. He would have won clearly. Maidana biting Floyd was funny because of that little girl scream. Yeah, he's like, ah! You look at the picture of him looking at his hand and going to the referee. Ah, my hand, my hand. Yeah, he's such a wimp. Don't hurt Floyd. Kenny Bayless. That should have been his nickname. Don't hurt Floyd. He was Floyd's bodyguard. He replaced Joe Cortez as Floyd's bodyguard. He did. Kenny Bayless did. He was a complete joke of a referee. Andrade should be ashamed of himself. He claimed he was being ducked for years. Then when he gets a big fight, he quits. Yeah, and he ducked a bunch of opponents. Also, he ducked Janibek and he ducked Parker while claiming no one wanted to fight him or that he couldn't get fights. Yeah. Yeah, Stevenson got knocked out in 2 rounds in the first fight. Oh no, you're on about Dawson. Sorry, I thought you were on about Boone. Yeah, Stevenson knocked out Dawson in the first round. That was brutal. That fight, brutal. I think Trout and Lara would be bad opponents for Floyd as well. Yeah, because of the long arms and lateral movement, the reach would give him problems. You know, Floyd's estrogen was released when Maidana bit him. Yeah, it was. He screamed like a little girl, screamed like an idiot. He did. Froch is lucky that Stevenson got the shot at Chad Dawson. He was the mandatory 160. Froch would never have fought Stevenson. Never. Because Stevenson would have knocked him out. He would have knocked him out brutally. Inside of 3 rounds, in my opinion. And Froch never fought him. Because he actually ducked that fight. He was his mandatory for a while. And Froch ducked him. Kenshiro Taraji. Yeah, I know Kenshiro Taraji. He's good. He beat Hecky Butler in a pretty good fight. Peterbiev would be a terrible matchup for Stevenson. Oh, Peterbiev walks him down, stops him. But again, Peterbiev could get dropped in that fight. But I think he'd get up and I think he'd win. Kind of like he did against what's his name? What's that guy's name again? The guy who dropped Beterbiev, the British guy. I forget his name at the minute. Someone will let me know, I'm sure. Callum Johnson. I remembered Callum Johnson. I think it would be similar to that fight. Similar fight, you know. Or ducked Canelo. I don't know. Pacquiao Mayweather fighting again. Well, if it's a real fight, Pacquiao knocks him out. But obviously, it's going to be an exhibition, so it won't be a real fight. They'll probably just spar. Either it'll be Floyd or a draw, you know. Stevenson had a puncher's chance against anyone, without a doubt, yeah. Yeah, Froch didn't want any part of Beaker. Beaker called him out for a unification, and Froch ducked it, you know, to fight a completely shot Kessler. Yeah, he ducked it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Froch, you know. The strawweight division, no, never followed it. Not even sure it's a real division. Vosdick versus Bivol. Bivol on points in a very close fight. I think Vosdick's a bigger puncher, but I think Bivol's a slightly better athlete with slightly more skills. So yeah, slightly better fighter. Stevenson and Ward would have been interesting, yeah. I think, again, Stevenson might have dropped Ward and might have even knocked him out, but I think Ward would spoil and clinch his way through it and either get a gift decision or lose on points. Kind of like the first Kovalev fight, you know. Adonis Stevenson versus Artur Beterbiev. Got Beterbiev. Bivol versus Jones. I got Jones. Inoue versus Rodriguez. I got Inoue. Yeah. Yeah. Or Rigondeaux. Sorry. Yeah, I agree. I agree pretty much. I agree. It's a shame we never got Kovalev versus Stevenson in 2014 or 15. Yeah, I do think Kovalev would have knocked him out, but it would have been a dangerous fight. And like you say, um, Stevenson had a puncher's chance against anybody, but I think Kovalev's the better fighter. Canelo versus Mark Demore. Mark Demore on points in a real fight. Most are trash, but who is the best female boxer you've seen? I would say Amanda Serrano. It would for me. It would probably be what's her name? Cecilia Breaker's probably the best female boxer. Like at least in terms of skill. I mean, she's crap, and she would lose to like any 15-year-old boy who could box. But she's probably better than any woman boxer I've ever seen, skill-wise. You know, in her prime anyway. My favorite boxer in the strawweight division is Paul Ant-Man Rudd. Ant-Man. That's funny. Yeah, but he could also be in the heavyweight division if he wanted. He could be in literally any division he wanted. I'd take Bivol over Jones. I think Jones's style might be all wrong for Bivol, you know, like because again, Bivol wouldn't apply the pressure necessary to get Jones out of there. So I could see Jones like nicking the points, just jumping in with a hook, then running around and just outpointing him that way. Like I would give Bivol a chance, but I would favor Jones, but I would give Bivol a chance. Pirog knocks Canelo out in 3 rounds in a real fight. But in a fake Canelo fight, he probably dies. But in a real fight, Pirog knocks him out easily, I think. Inoue versus Crawford. Crawford's just too big, way too big. He walks through him. But a prime, like say like prime for prime, both at the same weight division. If they were both similar size, Inoue knocks him out. You know. Shin Pascal was never the same after the first Kovalev fight. Yeah, that fight ruined him. I think he was punch drunk after that. Beterbiev versus AJ. That would be an interesting fight. Like, if Beterbiev bulked up to heavyweight, I think he could give AJ problems. I think AJ's size and strength might still get him the win though. Like he might stop him late, but it would be a competitive fight while it lasts, you know. So I would probably favor AJ in that fight. I think it's funny how all these big time fixed Western fights seem to always have the same 5 references. Like they really can't find any or referees. They really can't find anyone else to ref these fights. Yeah, it's always like your Kenny Baylesses or your Tony Weekses or one of these guys or like your Louis Pavons. You know, it's always one of them, isn't it? Usually, like you see them referees a lot. Nathan Cleverly deserves respect for taking the Kovalev fight when he could have gone a different direction, but he wanted to prove himself. Yeah, Cleverly specifically chose that fight because they wanted Kovalev to be his Jeff Lacey. That was the funny quote. Kovalev is Cleverly's Jeff Lacey. But yeah, Cleverly does deserve respect. I said so. He deserves respect because that was a really risky fight for him to take. And he was undefeated at the time. It wasn't a mandatory. He didn't have to fight Kovalev. You know, they selected him for the fight, and yeah, he dared to be great. I hate saying that to him, but yeah, he dared to be great. He took on a genuine challenge, and credit to him for doing it. Credit to him. Cleverly never ducked anybody. He was a warrior. Like some people say, he ducked Enzo Macronelli when he was calling him out, but there was not much demand for that fight, really. But yeah. Cleverly was the type of guy he'd fight anybody. Wasn't a great fighter, but he was a warrior. Yeah, Paul Ant-Man Rudd is planning on moving to up 16 weight classes to fight Wilder in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, well, he can make the weight easily. We know that, you know. I remember the ringside episode for the Cleverly versus Bellew rematch, and they spent 10 minutes arguing who got knocked out by the better fighter. I remember that. It was like Cleverly's like, I can assure you that Adonis Stevenson would get like, what was it he said? He was like, "I can assure you that Kovalev would wipe the floor with Adonis Stevenson." And then Bellew was just something like, "No, but I tell you, Adonis Stevenson is power. He's overrated. I can tell you that. I can tell you, Hopkins, he chose Kovalev and not Stevenson for a reason." I can remember that. It was like two guys arguing which of their daddies was better, like which of their which of their knockout losses was the most impressive. That was so funny. It was. Who would be Inoue's toughest fight at 126? I don't know at 126, but there's guys at like 130 that would be really tough for him. I don't know, man. I'd need to think about that. Yard's fighting a bum tonight. If you didn't know, I didn't even know Yard was fighting. I had no idea. Inoue versus Devin Gainey at 135. Devin probably too big. He'd probably just run away and get a gift decision by being the bigger, like more durable guy at that weight, you know? Yeah, cleverly beat Bellew in the first fight. And the second fight, he almost beat him with an injured hand, you know? Haney is too big for Inoue. Yeah, I agree. 135 pounds. Guys there are too big, particularly guys like Haney, you know? Yard, another British hype job bodybuilder. Yeah. Yeah, Yard was just built up on jobbers, like a lot of like just like Daniel Dubois was, you know. That's what Yard is, a hype job bodybuilder, you know. Yeah, the rematch was the real battle of the leftovers. It was, wasn't it? Yeah. That's even how they marketed it, wasn't it? It was funny how easily Cleverly annoyed Bellew. You could tell that Bellew couldn't stand him one bit, but I don't think Cleverly hated Bellew at all. I don't think he liked him, but he didn't hate him. Yeah. Bellew couldn't stand Cleverly. Like he would fly into fits of rage anytime Cleverly said anything. And like, do you remember like ringside? Bellew like pretended he tried to get out the ring to get Cleverly. Cleverly just stood there, and Bellew was waiting for someone to hold him back because you could tell Cleverly was just like, "Yeah, come on then, let's have a go." But Bellew was just so angry at Cleverly, he couldn't stand him. Brandon Figueroa sheer size and inside fighting would give Inoue problems. Inoue would have to hurt him early, which is possible. Yeah, that would be a difficult fight, come to think of it. Yeah, Inoue is an ATG right there with Chocolatito and Golovkin. I agree, he already is an ATG. He's not got much left to prove, especially at the lower weight divisions, you know? Bevo versus Zach. Bevo is quicker. Yeah, Bevo could maybe run all night and get a decision against the big Chinaman. You never know. Cleverly had a great fight with Fonfara, but I think it took a lot out of him. He looked shot against Bramer and Jack. Yeah, that Fonfara fight was fantastic. That was one of the fights of the year there. If you guys have never watched that, I recommend it. Cleverly versus Fonfara, great fight. And then Bramer took an obvious dive. Like Bramer was schooling Cleverly, and then he just quit on his stool for no reason. That was an obvious fixed fight. And then Badu Jack like destroyed him. Like Cleverly was shot at that point, completely shot by that fight. And yeah, he was on the way out. That was just a cash out fight for him. I don't even think he thought he'd win against Badu Jack. I think that was literally just a cash out fight. I remember reading a comment from someone that Yard only fights bums and Russian killers. Schizo career choice. It's true. The guy fights like 20 bums and then goes to Russia to fight Kovalev, gets smashed, fights several bums, then fights Beterbiev. I mean, come on. That's just crazy. That is, it's like one or the other, innit? Pure schizo. It really is. Current Kovalev versus current Chisora. Kovalev. I think Chisora is punch drunk. I think Kovalev, I don't think Kovalev would stop him, but I honestly think he'd beat him. I think he'd beat him on points. I really do. Honestly, I think Inoue would easily walk through Romero, Shakur Stevenson, Haney, Garcia, Tank. Tougher he'll have tougher against Loma and quite against Matias. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think he'd walk through them. I think they're just too big for that. But I think he could arguably beat some of them with skills, you know, maybe on points. but he'd have to adjust his style and be less aggressive and more economical to do it. How did you score Badou Jack versus James DeGale? I had Jack winning 15-11. I remember watching it several times because it was such a good fight. Yeah, I thought Jack clearly won. I think probably about 8-4, 9-3 Badou Jack I had it. So yeah, and I know were both guys knocked down. I think they were, but yeah. I thought Badou Jack clearly won that fight. Terrible decision. I know it was scored a draw. It was a great fight. I thought Badou Jack won it. I thought he won it clearly. Inoue spanks Shakur. He has no punching power or footwork. Yeah, but Shakur doesn't take any real fights. Just an absolute fraud, in my opinion. That's all he is. Whereas DeGale, I don't know. He disappeared when he retired. I think he's just happily retired. Doesn't really have any interest in being in the limelight. He's doing what Tony Bellew said he was going to do when he retired. I wish Tony Bellew had done what he said he was going to do and just disappeared and gone home to his wife and kids and sailed off into the sunset. Would have been better. I was astounded when people were telling me DeGale beat Badou Jack. I thought Jack won clearly. Yeah, same. Jack clearly won that fight. I have no idea what people were watching. He knocked DeGale's teeth out. He smashed his face to pieces and knocked his teeth out. Like, he clearly won that fight. How highly did you rate Julian Jackson? A big, massive puncher. Big puncher, great chin. Not the most skilled fighter out there, but very, very dangerous. Very good fighter. Yeah, I had it 8-4 for Jack with 1 point less each for the knockdowns, and DeGale was completely finished after the beating he took. Yeah, he was. He was never the same after that. That fight ruined DeGale. He was never the same after it. Yeah, I think the problem with DeGale is he took way too many punches. His defense was awful. Took way too many punches. Yeah, thanks for stopping by, Sven. God bless you, bro. Thanks for the live. It's been great. Yeah. Got to go now. Thanks for the live. It's been great. Yeah. No problem, man. It was great to have you here, man. God bless you. With that, we're nearly 4 hours into the stream, so yeah, I'm getting quite tired now. So yeah, it's been a good one, but I think I'm going to call it here. Thanks for stopping by, guys. It was great to catch up with you all, and yeah, God bless each and every one of you, and stay vigilant. Thanks for stopping by.